Book 10. The Argument. Jupiter, calling a council of the gods, forbids them to engage in either party. At Aeneas' return there is a bloody battle, Turnus killing Pallas, Aeneas, Lausus, and Mezentius. Mezentius is described as an atheist, Lausus as a pious and virtuous youth. The different actions and death of these two are the subject of a noble episode. The gates of heaven unfold. Jove summons all the gods to council in the common hall. Sublimely seated, he surveys from far the fields, the camp, the fortune of the war, and all inferior world. From first to last, the sovereign senate in degrees are placked. Then thus Almighty Sire began. Ye gods, natives or denizens of blessed abodes, from whence these murmurs and this change of mind, this backward fate from what was first designed? Why this protracted war, when my commands pronounced a peace, and gave the Latian lands? What fear or hope on either part divides our heavens, and arms our powers on different sides? A lawful time of war at length will come, nor need your haste anticipate the doom, when Carthage shall contend the world with Rome, shall force the rigid rocks and alpine chains, and like a flood come pouring on the plains. Then is your time for faction and debate, for partial favor and permitted hate. Let now your immature dissension cease, sit quiet, and compose your souls to peace. Thus Jupiter in few unfolds the charge, but lovely Venus thus replies at large. O power immense, eternal energy, for to what else protection can we fly? Seest thou the proud Rutulians, how they dare in fields unpunished and insult my care? How lofty Turnus vaunts amidst his train in shining arms, triumphant on the plain, even in their lines and trenches they contend, and scarce their walls the Trojan troops defend. The town is filled with slaughter and o'erfloats, with a red deluge their increasing moats. Aeneas, ignorant and far from thence, has left a camp exposed without defense. This endless outrage shall they still sustain? Shall Troy renewed be forked and furred again? A second siege my banished issue fears, and a new Diomed in arms appears. One more audacious mortal will be found, and I thy daughter wait another wound. Yet if with fates averse without thy leave, the Latian lands my progeny receive, bear they the pains of violated law, and thy protection from their aid withdraw. But if the gods their sure success foretell, if those of heaven consent with those of hell to promise Italy, who dare debate the power of Jove or fix another fate? What should I tell of tempests on the main, of Aeolus usurping Neptune's reign, of Iris sent, with bacchanalian heat inspire the matrons and destroy the fleet? Now Juno to the Stygian sky descends, solicits hell for aid and arms the fiends. That new example wanted yet above, an act that well became the wife of Jove. Alecto, raised by her, with rage inflames the peaceful bosoms of the Latian dames. Imperial sway no more exalts my mind. Such hopes I had indeed, while heaven was kind. Now let my happier foes possess my place, whom Jove prefers before the Trojan race, and conquer they whom you with conquest grace. Since you can spare from all your wide command no spot of earth, no hospitable land which may my wandering fugitives receive. Since haughty Juno will not give you leave, then, Father, if I still may use that name, by ruined Troy yet smoking from the flame, I beg you let Ascanius by my care be freed from danger and dismiss the war. Inglorious let him live without a crown. The father may be cast on coasts unknown struggling with fate, but let me save the son. Mine is Cythera, mine the Cyprian tors, in those recesses and those sacred boars obscurely let him rest. His right resigned to promised empire and his Julian line. Then Carthage may Ausonian towns destroy, nor fear the race of a rejected boy. What profits it my son to scape the fire, armed with his gods and loaded with his sire, to pass the perils of the seas and wind, evade the Greeks, and leave the war behind to reach Italian shores, if after all, our second Pergamus is doomed to fall? Much better had he curbed his high desires, and hovered o'er his ill-extinguished fires. To Simois banks the fugitives restore, and give them back to war and all the woes before. Deep indignation swelled Saturnia's heart. And must I own, she said, my secret smart, what with more decence were in silence kept, and but for this unjust reproach had slept, did God or man your favorite son advise, with war unhop the Latians to surprise. By fate you boast, and by the gods' decree. He left his native land for Italy, confess the truth. By mad Cassandra more than heaven inspeared, he sought a foreign shore. Did I persuade to trust his second Troy to the raw conduct of a beardless boy with walls unfinished, which himself forsakes, and through the waves a wandering voyage takes? When have I urged him meanly to demand the Tuscan aid and arm a quiet land? Did I or Iris give this mad advice? Or made the fool himself the fatal choice? You think it hard, the Latians should destroy with swords your Trojans, and with fires your Troy. Hard and unjust indeed, for men to draw their native air, nor take a foreign law. That Turnus is permitted still to live, to whom his birth a god and goddess give. But yet is just and lawful for your line to drive their fields, and force with fraud to join realms not your own among your clans divide, and from the bridegroom tear the promised bride. Petition while you public arms prepare, pretend a peace, and yet provoke a war. 'Twas given to you your darling son to shroud, to draw the dastard from the fighting crowd, and for a man obtend an empty cloud. From flaming fleets you turned the fire away, and chained the ships to daughters of the sea. But is my crime, the queen of heaven offends, if she presume to save her suffering friends? Your son, not knowing what his foes decree, you say, is absent. Absent let him be, yours is Cythera, yours the Cyprian tors, the soft recesses, and the sacred boars. Why do you then these needless arms prepare, and thus provoke a people prone to war? Did I with fire the Trojan town deface, or hinder from return your exiled race? Was I the cause of mischief, or the man whose lawless lust the fatal war began? Think on whose faith adulterous youth relied, who promised, who procured the Spartan bride, when all United States of Greece combined to purge the world of the perfidious kind. Then was your time to fear the Trojan fate. Your quarrels and complaints are now too late. Thus Juno. Murmurs rise with mixed applause, just as they favor or dislike the cause. So winds, when yet unfledged in woods they lie in, whispers first their tender voices try, then issue on the main with bellowing rage, and storms to trembling mariners presage. Then thus to both replied imperial god, who shakes heaven's axles with his awful nod. When he begins, the silent senate stand with reverence, listening to the dread command. The clouds dispel, the winds their breath restrain, and the hushed waves lie flatted on the main. Celestials, your attentive ears incline. Since, said the god, the Trojans must not join in wished alliance with the Latian line, since endless jarrings and immortal hate tend but to discompose our happy state, the war henceforward be resigned to fate, each to his proper fortune stand or fall, equal and unconcerned I look on all. Rutulians, Trojans, are the same to me, and both shall draw the lots their fates decree. Let these assault if fortune be their friend, and if she favors those, let those defend. The fates will find their way. The Thundra said, and shook the sacred honors of his head, attesting Styx, inviolable flood, and the black regions of his brother god. Trembled the poles of heaven, and earth confessed the nod. This end the sessions had. The Senate rise, and to his palace wait their sovereign throw the skies. Meantime, intent upon their siege, the foes within their walls the Trojan host enclose. They wound, they kill, they watch at every gate, renew the fires and urge their happy fate. Aenians wish in vain their wanted chief, hopeless of flight, more hopeless of relief, thin on the tors they stand, and even those few a feeble, fainting and dejected crew. Yet in the face of danger some there stood, the two bold brothers of Sarpedon's blood, Aeneas and Acmon, both a Saracen, young Heman, and though young resolved to die. With these were Clarus and Thymotes joined, Tibris and Castor, both of Lycian kind. From Acmon's hands a rolling stone there came, so large, it half deserved a mountain's name. Strong-sinewed was the youth, and big of bone. His brother Mnestheus could not more have done, or the great father of intrepid son. Some firebrands throw, some flights of arrows send, and some with darts and some with stones defend. Amid the press appears the beauteous boy, the care of Venus and the hope of Troy. His lovely face unarmed, His head was bare. In ringlets o'er his shoulders hung his hair. His forehead circled with a diadem. Distinguished from the crowd, he shines a gem, enchased in gold or polished ivory set, amidst the meaner foil of sable jet. Nor Ismarus was wanting to the war, directing pointed arrows from afar, and death with poison armed, in Lydia born, where plenteous harvests the fat fields adorn, where proud Pactolus floats the fruitful lands, and leaves a rich manure of golden sands, there Capys, author of the Capuan name, and there was Mnestheus too, increased in fame, since Turnus from the camp he cast with shame. Thus mortal war was wagged on either side. Meantime the hero cuts the nightly tide, for anxious from Evander when he went, he sought the Tyrrhene camp and Tarchon's tent, exposed the cause of coming to the chief, his name and country told, and asked relief, proposed the terms. His own small strength declared what vengeance proud Mezentius had prepared, what Turnus, bold and violent, designed, then showed the slippery state of humankind, and fickle fortune warned him to beware, and to his wholesome counsel added prayer. Tarchon without delay the treaty signs, and to the Trojan troops the Tuscan joins. They soon set sail, nor now the fates withstand their forces trusted with a foreign hand. Aeneas leads. Upon his stern appear two lions carved, which rising Ida bear, Ida to wandering Trojans ever dear. Under their grateful shade Aeneas sate, revolving war's events and various fate. His left young Pallas kept, fixed to his side, and oft of winds inquired, and of the tide, oft of the stars, and of their watry way, and what he suffered both by land and sea. Now, sacred sisters, open all your spring. The Tuscan leaders and their army sing, which followed great Aeneas to the war, their arms, their numbers, and their names declare. 1,000 youths brave Massicus obey, born in the tiger throw the foaming sea, from Aeaeum brought, and Cosa by his care. For arms, light quivers, bows, and shafts they bear, fierce Abas next. His men bright armor wore, his stern Apollo's golden statue bore, 600 Populonia sent along, all skilled in martial exercise and strong. 300 more for battle Ilva joins, an isle renowned for steel and unexhausted mines. Aeschylus on his prow the third appears, who heaven interprets and the wandering stars from offered entrails prodigies expounds, and peals of thunder with presaging sounds. 1,000 spears in warlike order stand, sent by the Pisans under his command. Fair Astur follows in the watry field, proud of his man-egged horse and painted shield. Gravisca, noisome from the neighboring fen, and his own Caret, sent 300 men, with those which Minio's fields and Peagi gave, all bred in arms, unanimous and brave. Thou Muse, the name of Cinyras renew, and brave Cupavo followed but by few, whose helm confessed the lineage of the man, and bore, with wings displayed, a silver swan. Love was the fault of his famed ancestry, whose forms and fortunes in his ensigns fly. For sickness loved unhappy Phaeton, and sung his loss in poplar groves, alone beneath the sister shades to soothe his grief. He even heard his song and hastened his relief, and changed to snowy plumes his hoary hair, and winged his flight to chant aloft in air. His son Cupavo brushed the briny flood. Upon his stern a brawny centaur stood, who heaved a rock, and threatening still to throw, with lifted hands alarmed the seas below. They seemed to fear the formidable sight, and rolled their billows on to speed his flight. Ocnus was next, who led his native train of hardy warriors through the watery plain, the son of Manto by the Tuscan stream, from whence the Mantuan town derives the name. An ancient city, but of mixed descent. 3 several tribes compose the government, 4 towns are under each, but all obey the Mantuan laws and own the Tuscan sway. Hate to Mezentius armed 500 more, whom Mincius from his sire Benacus bore. Mincius, with wreaths of reeds his forehead covered o'er, these grave Auletes leads. 100 sweep with stretching oars at once the glassy deep. Him and his martial train the Triton bears. High on his poop the sea-green god appears. Frowning he seems his crooked shell to sound, and at the blast the billows dance around. A hairy man above the waist he shows, a porpoise tail beneath his belly grows, and ends a fish. His breast the waves divides, and froth and foam augment the murmuring tides. Full 30 ships transport the chosen train for Troy's relief, and scour the briny main. Now was the world forsaken by the sun, and Phoebe half her nightly race had run. The careful chief who never closed his eyes himself the rudder holds, the sails supplies. A choir of Nereids meet him on the flood, once his own galleys, hewn from Ida's wood. But now as many nymphs the sea they sweep as rode before tall vessels on the deep. They know him from afar, and in a ring enclose the ship that bore the Trojan king. Cymodos, whose voice excelled the rest, above the waves advanced her snowy breast. Her right hand stops the stern, her left divides the curling ocean and corrects the tides. She spoke for all the choir, and thus began with pleasing words to warn unknowing man. Sleeps our loved lord. O goddess-born, awake, spread every sail, pursue your watery track, and haste your course. Your navy once were we, from Ida's height descending to the sea, till Turnus, as at anchor fixed we stood, presumed to violate our holy wood. Then loosed from shore we fled his fires profane, unwillingly we broke our master's chain, and since have sought you through the Tuscan main. The mighty mother chained our forms to these, and gave us life immortal in the seas, but young Aeneas in his camp distressed, by your insulting foes is hardly pressed. Arcadian horsemen and Etrurian host advance in order on the Latian coast, to cut their way the Daunian chief designs, before their troops can reach the Trojan lines. Thou, when the rosy morn restores the light, first arm thy soldiers for ensuing fight, thyself the fated sword of Vulcan wield, and bear aloft impenetrable shield. Tomorrow's sun, unless my skill be vain, shall see huge heaps of foes in battle slain. Parting she spoke, and with immortal force pushed on the vessel in her watery course, for well she knew the way. Impelled behind, the ship flew forward and outstripped the wind, the rest make up. Unknowing of the cause, the chief admires their speed and happy omens draws. Then thus he prayed and fixed on heaven his eyes, Hear thou, great mother of the deities, with turrets crowned. On Ida's holy hill fierce tigers reigned and curbed, obey thy will. Firm thy own omens, lead us on to fight, and let thy Phrygians conquer in thy right. He said no more, and now renewing day had chased the shadows of the night away. He charged the soldiers with preventing care, their flags to follow and their arms prepare, warned of ensuing fight, and bade him hope the war. Now his lofty poop he viewed below his camp encompassed, and enclosing foe. His blazing shield embracked he held on high, the camp received the sign, and with loud shouts reply. Hope arms their courage. From their towers they throw their darts with double force and drive the foe. Thus at the signal given, the cranes arise before the stormy south, and blacken all the skies. King Turnus wondered at the fight renewed, till looking back the Trojan fleet he viewed, the seas with swelling canvas covered o'er, and the swift ships descending on the shore. The Latians saw from far, with dazzled eyes, the radiant crest that seemed in flames to rise, and dart diffusive fires around the field, and the keen glittering of the golden shield. Thus threatening comets, when by night they rise, shoot sanguine streams and sadden all the skies. So serious, flashing forth sinister lights, pale humankind with plagues and with dry famine fright. Yet Turnus with undaunted mind is bent to man the shores, and hinder their descent, and thus awakes the courage of his friends. What you so long have wished, kind fortune sends. In ardent arms to meet invading foe you find, and find him at advantage. Now yours is the day. You need but only dare, your swords will make you masters of the war. Your sires, your sons, your houses, and your lands, and dearest wives, are all within your hands. Be mindful of the race from whence you came, and emulate in arms your father's fame. Now take the time, while staggering yet they stand, with feet unfirm and prepossess the strand. Fortune befriends the bold. Nor more he said, but balanced whom to leave and whom to lead. Then these elects the landing to prevent, and those he leaves to keep the city pent. Meantime the Trojan sends his troops ashore. Some are by boats exposed, by bridges more. With laboring oars they bear along the strand, where the tide languishes and leap a land. Trojan observes the coast with careful eyes, and where no ford he finds, no water fries, nor billows with unequal murmurs roar, but smoothly slide along and swell the shore, that course he steered, and thus he gave command. Here ply your oars, and at all hazard land force on the vessel, that her keel may wound this hated soil and furrow hostile ground. Let me securely land. I ask no more, then sink my ships or shatter on the shore. This fiery speech inflames his fearful friends. They tug at every oar, and every stretcher bends. They run their ships aground. The vessels knock, thus forked ashore, and tremble with the shock. Trojans alone was lost, that stranded stood stuck on a bank, and beaten by the flood she breaks her back. The loosened sides give way, and plunge the Tuscan soldiers in the sea. Their broken oars and floating planks withstand their passage, while they labor to the land, and ebbing tides bear back upon uncertain sand. Now Turnus leads his troops without delay, advancing to the margin of the sea. The trumpets sound. Aeneas first assailed the clowns, new raised and raw, and soon prevailed. Great Thuron fell, an omen of the fight. Great Thuron, large of limbs, of giant height. He first in open field defied the prince. But armor scaled with gold was no defense against the fated sword, which opened wide his plated shield and pierced his naked side. Next Lichas fell, who, not like others born, was from his wretched mother ripped and torn. Sacred, O Phoebus, from his birth to thee, for his beginning life from biting steel was free. Not far from him was Gyas laid along, of monstrous bulk, with Cisseus fierce and strong, vain bulk and strength. For when the chief assailed, nor valor nor Herculean arms availed, nor their famed father, won in war to go with great Alcides, while he toiled below. The noisy Pharos next received his death. Aeneas writhed his dart, and stopped his bawling breath. Then wretched Sidon had received his doom, who courted Clytius in his beardless bloom, and sought with lust obscene polluted joys. The Trojan sword had curd his love of boys, had not his 7 bold brethren stopped the course of the fierce champions, with united force. 7 darts were thrown at once, and some rebound from his bright shield, some on his helmet sound. The rest had reached him, but his mother's care prevented those, and turned aside in air. The prince then called Aeneas to supply the spears that knew the way to victory, those fatal weapons which, inured to blood, in Grecian bodies under Ilium stood. Not one of those my hand shall toss in vain against our foes on this contended plain, he said. Then seized a mighty spear, and through which, winged with fate, thro' Maeon's buckler flew, pierced all the brazen plates, and reached his heart. He staggered with intolerable smart. Alcanor saw, and reached, but reached in vain, his helping hand his brother to sustain. A second spear, which kept the former course from the same hand, and sent with equal force, his right arm pierced, and holding on bereft his use of both, and pinioned down his left. Then Numitor from his dead brother drew ill-omened spear, and at the Trojan threw, preventing fate directs the lance awry, which, glancing, only marked Aeneas' thigh. In pride of youth the Sabine Colossus came, and from afar at Dryops took his aim. The spear flew hissing thro' the middle space, and pierced his throat, directed at his face. It stopped at once the passage of his wind, and the free soul to flitting air resigned. His forehead was the first that struck the ground. Lifeblood and life rushed mingled thro' the wound. He slew 3 brothers of the Borean race, and 3 whom Ismarus, their native place, had sent to war, but all the sons of Thrace. Halcis next the bold Oronci leads. The son of Neptune to his aid succeeds, conspicuous on his horse. On either hand these fight to keep, and those to win, the land. With mutual blood Ausonian soil is dyed, while on its borders each their claim decide. As wintry winds, contending in the sky, with equal force of lungs their titles try, they rage, they roar. The doubtful rack of heaven stands without motion, and the tide undriven, each bent to conquer, neither side to yield. They long suspend the fortune of the field. Both armies thus perform what courage can, foot set to foot, and mingled man to man. But in another part Arcadian horse with ill success engage the Latin force, for where impetuous torrent rushing down, huge craggy stones and rooted trees had thrown, they left their coursers, and unus to fight on foot were scattered in a shameful flight. Pallas, who with disdain and grief had viewed his foes pursuing and his friends pursued, us threatenings mixed with prayers his last resource. With these to move their minds, with those to fire their force. Which way, companions? Whither would you run? By you yourselves, and mighty battles won, by my great sire, by his established name, an early promise of my future fame, by my youth, emulous of equal right to share his honors. Shun ignoble flight, trust not your feet. Your hands must hew way through yon black body and that thick array. Tease through that forward path that we must come, there lies our way, and that our passage home. Nor powers above, nor destinies below oppress our arms. With equal strength we go, with mortal hands to meet a mortal foe. See on what foot we stand. A scanty shore, the sea behind, our enemies before, no passage left unless we swim the main, or forcing these the Trojan trenches gain. This said, he strode with eager haste along, and bore amidst the thickest of the throng. Lagus, the first he met with fate to foe, had heaved a stone of mighty weight to throw. Stooping, the spear descended on his chine, just where the bone distinguished either loin. It stuck so fast, so deeply buried lay, that scarce the victor forked the steel away. His spin came on, but while he moved too slow to wished revenge, the prince prevents his blow, for, warding his at once he pressed, and plunged the fatal weapon in his breast. Then lewd Anchemolus he laid in dust, who stained his stepdom's bed with impious lust. And after him the Dacian twins were slain, Laris and Thymbrus, on the Latian plain, so wondrous like in feature, shape, and size, as cast an error in their parents' eyes. Grateful mistake. But soon the sword decides the nice distinction, and their fate divides, for Thymbrus' head was lopped, and Laris' hand, dismembered, sought its owner on the strand. The trembling fingers yet the falchion strain, and threatened still intended stroke in vain. Now to renew the charge Arcadians came. Sight of such acts and sense of honest shame and grief with anger mixed, their minds inflame. Then with a casual blow was Rhodius slain, who chanked as Pallas threw to cross the plain. The flying spear was after Ilus sent, but Rhodius happened on a death unmeant, from Teuthras and from Tyres while he fled. The lance athwart his body laid him dead, rolled from his chariot with a mortal wound, and intercepted fate, he spurned the ground. As when in summer welcome winds arise, the watchful shepherd to the forest flies and fires the midmost plants. Contagion spreads, and catching flames infect the neighboring heads. Around the forest flies the furious blast, and all the leafy nation sinks at last, and Vulcan rides in triumph o'er the waste. The pastor, pleased with his dire victory, beholds the satiate flames in sheets ascend the sky. So Pallas, troops their scattered strength unite, and pouring on their foes their prince delight. Halsus came, fierce with desire of blood, but first collected in his arms he stood. Advancing then he plied the spear so well, Ladon Demodocus in fears fell. Around his head he tossed his glittering brand, and from Strymonius hewed his better hand, held up to guard his throat. Then hurled a stone at Thoa's ample front and pierced the bone. It struck beneath the space of either eye, and blood and mingled brains together fly. Deep skilled in future fates, Halsus, sire, did with the youth to lonely groves retire. But when the father's mortal race was run, dire destiny laid hold upon the son, and hauled him to the war, to find beneath Evandrian spear a memorable death. Pallas encounter seeks, but ere he throws, to Tuscan Tiber thus addressed his vows. O sacred stream, direct my flying dart, and give to pass the proud Halsus' heart. His arms and spoils thy holy oak shall bear. Pleased with the bribe, the god received his prayer, for, while his shield protects a friend distressed, the dart came driving on and pierced his breast. But Lausus, no small portion of the war, permits not panic fear to reign too far, cowed by the death of so renowned a knight, but by his own example cheers the fight. Fierce Abas first he slew, Abas, the stay of Trojan hopes and hindrance of the day. The Phrygian troops escaped the Greeks in vain, they and their mixed allies now load the plain. To the rude shock of war both armies came, their leaders equal and their strength the same. The rear so pressed the front, they could not wield their angry weapons to dispute the field. Here Pallas urges on, and Lausus there. Of equal youth and beauty both appear, but both by fate forbid to breathe their native air. Their congress in the field great Jove withstands, both doomed to fall but fall by greater hands. Meantime Juno warns the Daunian chief of Lausus' danger, urging swift relief. With his driven chariot he divides the crowd, and making to his friends thus calls aloud, "Let none presume his needless aid to join. Retire and clear the field. The fight is mine to this right hand is Pallas only due. Oh, were his father here, my just revenge to view." From the forbidden space his men retired. Pallas their awe and his stern words admired surveyed him o'er and o'er with wondering sight, struck with his haughty mien and towering height. Then to the king, "Your empty vaunts forbear. Success I hope and fate I cannot fear. Alive or dead, I shall deserve a name. Jove is impartial and to both the same," he said, and to the void advanced his pace. Pale horror sate on each Arcadian face. Then Turnus, from his chariot leaping light, addressed himself on foot to single fight. And as a lion, when he spies from far a bull that seems to meditate the war, bending his neck and spurning back the sand, runs roaring downward from his hilly stand. Imagine eager Turnus not more slow to rush from high on his unequal foe. Young Pallas, when he saw the chief advance within due distance of his flying lance, prepares to charge him first, resolved to try if fortune would his want of force supply, and thus to heave in Hercules addressed, "Alcides, once on earth Evander's guest, his son adjures you by those holy rites, that hospitable board, those genial nights. Assist my great attempt to gain this prize, and let proud Turnus view with dying eyes his ravished spoils." 'Twas heard the vain request, Alcides mourned and stifled sighs within his breast. Then Jove, to soothe his sorrow, thus began, "Short bounds of life are set to mortal man. 'Tis virtue's work alone to stretch the narrow span. So many sons of gods in bloody fight around the walls of Troy have lost the light. My own Sarpedon fell beneath his foe, nor I, his mighty sire, could ward the blow. Even Turnus shortly shall resign his breath, and stands already on the verge of death." This said, the god permits the fatal fight, but from the Latian fields averts his sight. Now with full force his spear young Pallas threw, and having thrown, his shining falchion drew the steel just grazed along the shoulder joint, and marked it slightly with the glancing point. Fierce Turnus first to nearer distance drew, and pawed his pointed spear before he threw. Then, as the winged weapon whizzed along, "See now," said he, "whose arm is better strung." The spear kept on the fatal course, unstayed by plates of urn, which o'er the shield were laid. Through folded brass and tough bull hides it passed, his corslet pierced and reached his heart at last. In vain the youth tugs at the broken wood, the soul comes issuing with the vital blood he falls. His arms upon his body sound, and with his bloody teeth he bites the ground. Turnus bestrode the corpse. "Arcadians, hear," said he, "my message to your master bear, such as the sire deserved, the son I send. It costs him dear to be the Phrygians' friend. The lifeless body, tell him, I bestow, unasked, to rest his wandering ghost below." He said, and trampled down with all the force of his left foot, and spurned the wretched corse, then snatched the shining belt, with gold inlaid. The belt Eurytion's artful hands had made, where 50 fatal brides, expressed to sight, all in the compass of one mournful night, deprived their bridegrooms of returning light. In an ill hour insulting Turnus tore those golden spoils, and in a worse he wore. O mortals, blind in fate, who never know to bear high fortune, or endure the low, the time shall come, when Turnus, but in vain shall wish untouched the trophies of the slain, shall wish the fatal belt were far away, and curse the dire remembrance of the day. The sad Arcadians from th unhappy field bear back the breathless body on a shield. O grace and grief of war! At once restored with praises to thy sire, at once deplored. One day first sent thee to the fighting field, beheld whole heaps of foes in battle killed. One day beheld thee dead and borne upon thy shield. This dismal news not from uncertain fame, but sad spectators to the hero came. His friends upon the brink of ruin stand, unless relieved by his victorious hand. He whirls his sword around without delay, and hews through adverse foes an ample way to find fierce Turnus, of his conquest proud. Evander, Pallas, All that friendship owed to large deserts are present to his eyes, his plighted hand and hospitable ties. 4 sons of Sulmo, 4 whom Ufens bred, he took in fight and living victims led to please the ghost of Pallas and expire, in sacrifice before his funeral fire. At Magus next he threw. He stooped below the flying spear and shunned the promised blow, then, creeping, clasped the hero's knees and prayed, "By young Aeolus, by thy father's shade, O spare my life and send me back to see my longing sire and tender progeny. A lofty house I have, and wealth untold, in silver ingots and in bars of gold, all these and sums besides which see no day, the ransom of this one poor life shall pay. If I survive, will Troy the less prevail? A single soul's too light to turn the scale," he said. The hero sternly thus replied, "Thy bars and ingots and the sums beside leave for thy children's lot. Thy Turnus broke all rules of war by one relentless stroke, when Pallas fell. So deems, nor deems alone my father's shadow, but my living son." Thus having said, of kind remorse bereft, he seized his helm and dragged him with his left, then with his right hand, while his neck he wreathed, up to the hilts his shining falchion sheathed. Apollo's priest, Aeneid, was near. His holy falaise on his front appear. Glittering in arms, he shone amidst the crowd, much of his god, more of his purple, proud. Him the fierce Trojan followed thro' the field, the holy coward fell, and forked to yield, the prince stood o'er the priest, and at one blow sent him an offering to the shades below. His arms Cerysthus on his shoulders bears, designed a trophy to the god of wars. Vulcanian Caeculus renews the fight, and Umbro, born upon the mountain's height. The champion cheers his troops to encounter those, and seeks revenge himself on other foes. At Anxur's shield he drove, and at the blow both shield and arm to ground together go. Anxur had boasted much of magic charms, and thought he wore impenetrable arms, so made by muttered spells, and from the spheres had life secured in vain for length of years. Then Tarquitus the field in triumph trod, a nymph his mother, his sire a god. Exulting in bright arms he braves the prince, with his protended lance he makes defense, bears back his feeble foe. Then pressing on, arrests his better hand and drags him down, stands o'er the prostrate wretch, and as he lay, vain tales inventing and prepared to prey, mows off his head. The trunk a moment stood, then sunk, and rolled along the sand in blood. The vengeful victor thus upbraids the slain. "Lie there, proud man, unpitied on the plain, lie there, inglorious and without a tomb, far from thy mother and thy native home, exposed to savage beasts and birds of prey, or thrown for food to monsters of the sea." On Lycus and Antaeus next he ran, 2 chiefs of Turnus, and who led his van. They fled for fear. With these he chased along Camers the yellow-locked, and Numa strong, both great in arms, and both were fair and young. Camers was son to Volscens lately slain, in wealth surpassing all the Latian train, and in Amycla fixed his silent, easy reign. And as Aegeon, when with Heaven he strove, stood opposite in arms to mighty Jove, all his 100 hands provoked the war, defied the forky lightning from afar. At 50 mouths his flaming breath expires, and flash for flash returns, and fires for fires. In his right hand as many swords he wields, and takes the thunder on as many shields. With strength like his, the Trojan hero stood, and soon the fields with falling core were strowed, when once his falchion found the taste of blood. With fury scarce to be conceived, he flew against Niphaeus, whom 4 coursers drew they, when they see the fiery chief advance, and pushing at their chests his pointed lance, wheeled with so swift a motion, mad with fear they threw their master headlong from the chair. They stare, they start, nor stop their course, before they bear the bounding chariot to the shore. Now Lucagus and Liger scour the plains with 2 white steeds, but Liger holds the reins, and Lucagus the lofty seat maintains, bold brethren both. The former waved in air his flaming sword, Aeneas couched his spear, on us to threats and more on us to fear. Then Liger thus, "Thy confidence is vain to scape from hence, as from the Trojan plain, nor these the steeds which Dione bestrode, nor this the chariot where Achilles rode, nor Venus' veil is here, near Neptune's shield. Thy fatal hour is come, and this the field. Thus Liger vainly vaunts. The Trojan peer returned his answer with his flying spear. As Lucagus, to lash his horses, bends prone to the wheels and his left foot protends prepared for fight, the fatal dart arrives, and through the borders of his buckler drives past throw and pierced his groin. The deadly wound cast from his chariot rolled him on the ground, whom thus the chief upbraids with scornful spite. Blame not the slowness of your steeds in flight. Vain shadows did not force their swift retreat, but you yourself forsake your empty seat. He said and seized at once the loosened rein, for Liger lay already on the plain by the same shock. Then, stretching out his hands, the recreant thus his wretched life demands. Now by thyself, O more than mortal man, by her and him from whom thy breath began, who formed thee thus divine, I beg thee, spare this forfeit life and hear thy suppliant's prayer. Thus much he spoke, and more he would have said, but the stern hero turned aside his head and cut him short. I hear another man, you talked not thus before the fight began. Now take your turn, and as a brother should, attend your brother to the Stygian flood. Then through his breast his fatal sword he sent, and the soul issued at the gaping vent. As storms the skies and torrents tear the ground, thus ragged the prince and scattered deaths around. At length Aeneas and the Trojan train broke from the camp, so long besieged in vain. Meantime the king of gods and mortal man held conference with his queen, and thus began. My sister goddess and well-pleasing wife, still think you Venus, aid supports the strife, sustains her Trojans or themselves alone, with inborn valor force their fortune on, how fierce in fight with courage undecayed. Judge if such warriors want immortal aid. To whom the goddess with the charming eyes soft in her tone, submissively replies, Why, O my sovereign lord, whose frown I fear, and cannot unconcerned your anger bear, why urge you thus my grief? When if I still, as once I was, were mistress of your will, from your almighty power your pleasing wife might gain the grace of lengthening Turnus' life, securely snatch him from the fatal fight, and give him to his aged father's sight. Now let him perish, since you hold it good, and glut the Trojans with his pious blood. Yet from our lineage he derives his name, and in the 4th degree from God Pilumnus came. Yet he devoutly pays you rites divine, and offers daily incense at your shrine. Then shortly thus the sovereign God replied, Since in my power and goodness you confide, if for a little space, a lengthened span, you beg reprieve for this expiring man, I grant you leave to take your Turnus hence from instant fate and can so far dispense. But if some secret meaning lies beneath, to save the short-lived youth from destined death, or if a farther thought you entertain to change the fates, you feed your hopes in vain. To whom the goddess thus with weeping eyes, And what if that request your tongue denies your heart should grant, and not a short reprieve, but length of certain life to Turnus give, now speedy death attends the guiltless youth, if my presaging soul divines with truth, which, oh, I wish might o'erthrow causeless fears, and you, for you have power, prolong his years. As having said, involved in clouds, she flies and drives a storm before her through the skies. Swift she descends, alighting on the plain, where the fierce foes a dubious fight maintain. Of air condensed a spectre soon she made, and what Aeneas was, such seemed the shade. Adorned with dardan arms, the phantom bore his head aloft. A plumy crest he wore, this hand appeared a shining sword to wield, and that sustained an imitated shield. With manly mien he stalked along the ground, nor wanted voice belied, nor vaunting sound. Thus haunting ghosts appear to waking sight, or dreadful visions in our dreams by night. The spectre seems the Daunian chief to dare, and flourishes his empty sword in air. At this, advancing, Turnus hurled his spear, the phantom wheeled and seemed to fly for fear. Deluded Turnus thought the Trojan fled, and with vain hopes his haughty fancy fed. Whether, O coward? Thus he calls aloud, nor found he spoke to wind and chased a cloud. Why thus forsake your bride? Receive from me the fated land you sought so long by sea, he said, and brandishing at once his blade, with eager pace pursued the flying shade. By chance a ship was fastened to the shore, which from old Clusium King Aeneas bore. The plank was ready laid for safe ascent, for shelter there the trembling shadow bent, and skipped and skulked and under hatches went. Exulting Turnus with regardless haste, ascends the plank and to the galley passed. Scarce had he reached the prow. Saturnia's hand the hawsers cuts and shoots the ship from land. With wind in poop, the vessel plows the sea and measures back with speed her former way. Meantime Aeneas seeks his absent foe and sends his slaughtered troops to shades below. The guileful phantom now forsook the shroud and flew sublime and vanished in a cloud. Too late young Turnus the delusion found, far on the sea, still making from the ground. Then, thankless for a life redeemed by shame, with sense of honor stung and forfeit fame, fearful besides of what in fight had passed, his hands and haggard eyes to heaven he cast. "O Jove," he cried, "for what offense have I deserved to bear this endless infamy? Whence am I forked, and whether am I born? How, and with what reproach shall I return? Shall ever I behold the Latian plain, or see Laurentum's lofty tors again? What will they say of their deserting chief? The war was mine. I fly from their relief, I led to slaughter, and in slaughter leave. And even from hence their dying groans receive here. Overmatched in fight, in heaps they lie there, scattered o'er the fields, ignobly fly. Gape wide, O earth, and draw me down alive, or, O ye pitying winds, a wretch relieve. On sands or shelves the splitting vessel drive, or set me shipwrecked on some desert shore, where no Rutulian eyes may see me more, unknown to friends or foes or conscious fame, lest she should follow, and my flight proclaim." Thus Turnus raved, and various fates revolved. The choice was doubtful, but the death resolved. And now the sword, and now the sea took place, that to revenge, and this to purge disgrace. Sometimes he thought to swim the stormy main, by stretch of arms the distant shore to gain. Thrice he the sword essayed, and thrice the flood, but Juno with pity both withstood, and thrice repressed his rage. Strong gales supplied and pushed the vessel o'er the swelling tide. At length she lands him on his native shores, and to his father's longing arms restores. Meantime by Jove's impulse Mezentius armed, succeeding Turnus, with his ardor warmed his fainting friends, reproached their shameful flight, repelled the victors, and renewed the fight. Against their king the Tuscan troops conspire, such is their hate, and such their fierce desire of wished revenge. On him, and him alone, all hands employed, and all their darts are thrown. He, like a solid rock by seas enclosed, to raging winds and roaring waves opposed, from his proud summit looking down, disdains their empty menace, and unmoved remains. Beneath his feet fell haughty Hebrus dead, then Latagus and Pomus as he fled. At Latagus a weighty stone he flung, his face was flatted and his helmet wrung. But Pomus from behind receives his wound, hamstringed he falls and grovels on the ground, his crest and armor from his body torn, thy shoulders, Lausus, and thy head adorn. Evas and Mimas both of Troy he slew. Mimas his birth from fair Theno drew, born on that fatal night when, big with fire, the queen product young Paris to his sire. But Paris in the Phrygian fields was slain, unthinking Mimas on the Latian plain. And as a savage boar on mountains bred, with forest mast and fattening marshes fed, when once he sees himself in toils enclosed, by huntsmen and their eager hounds opposed, he whets his tusks and turns and dares the war. Invaders dart their javelins from afar, all keep aloof and safely shout around. But none presumes to give a nearer wound. He frets and froths, erects his bristled hide, and shakes a grove of lances from his side. Not otherwise the troops, with hate inspeared, and just revenge against the tyrant furred, their darts with clamor at a distance drive, and only keep the languished war alive. From Corytus came Acron to the fight, who left his spouse betrothed, an unconsummate knight. Mezentius sees him throw, the squadrons ride, proud of the purple favors of his bride. Then, as a hungry lion who beholds a gamesome goat who frisks about the folds, or beamy stag that grazes on the plain, he runs, he roars. He shakes his rising mane, he grins, and opens wide his greedy jaws. The prey lies panting underneath his paws, he fills his famished maw. His mouth runs o'er with unchewed morsels while he churns the gore. So proud Mezentius rushes on his foes, and first unhappy Acron overthrows. Stretched at his length, he spurns the swarthy ground. The lance, besmeared with blood, lies broken in the wound. Then with disdain the haughty victor viewed Orodes flying, nor the wretch pursued, nor thought the dastard's back deserved a wound, but running gained advantage of the ground. Then turning short he met him face to give his victory the better grace. Orodes falls in equal fight. Mezentius fixed his foot upon his breast and rested lance, and thus aloud he cries, "Lo, here the champion of my rebels lies, the fields around with Io paean." Ring and peals of shouts applaud the conquering king. At this the vanquished with his dying breath thus faintly spoke and prophesied in death. "Nor thou, proud man, unpunished shalt remain, like death attends thee on this fatal plain." Then, sourly smiling, thus the king replied, "For what belongs to me let Jove provide. But die thou first whatever chance ensue," he said, and from the wound the weapon drew. A hovering mist came swimming o'er his sight and sealed his eyes in everlasting night. By Caedicus Alcathous was slain. Sacrator laid Hydasps on the plain. Orses the strong to greater strength must yield. He with Parthenius were by Rapo killed. Then brave Messapus Aricetes slew, who from Lycaon's blood his lineage drew. But from his headstrong horse his fate he found, who threw his master as he made a bound. The chief, alighting, stuck him to the ground. Then Clonius, hand to hand, on foot assails. The Trojan sinks and Neptune's son prevails. Agis the Lycian, stepping forth with pride to single fight the boldest foe defied, whom Tuscan valorous by force o'ercame, and not belied his mighty father's fame. Salius to death the great Antronius sent, but the same fate the victor underwent, slain by Niels's hand, well skilled to throw the flying dart and draw the far-deceiving bow. Thus equal deaths are dealt with equal chance. By turns they quit their ground, by turns advance victors and vanquished in the various field, nor wholly overcome, nor wholly yield. The gods from heaven survey the fatal strife, and mourn the miseries of human life. Above the rest, two goddesses appear concerned for each. Here Venus, Juno there. Amidst the crowd, infernal Eight shakes her scourge aloft and crest of hissing snakes. Once more the proud Mezentius with disdain brandished his spear and rushed into the plain, where touring in the midmost rank he stood, like tall Orion stalking o'er the flood. When with his brawny breast he cuts the waves, his shoulders scarce the topmost billow laves, or like a mountain ash whose roots are spread, deep fixed in earth, in clouds he hides his head. The Trojan prince beheld him from afar, and dauntless undertook the doubtful war. Collected in his strength and like a rock pawed on his base, Mezentius stood the shock. He stood, and measuring first with careful eyes the space his spear could reach, aloud he cries, "My strong right hand and sword assist my stroke. Those only gods Mezentius will invoke. His armor from the Trojan pirate torn, by my triumphant Lausus shall be worn." He said, and with his utmost force he threw the massy spear, which, hissing as it flew, reached the celestial shield that stopped the course. But glancing thence, the yet unbroken force took a new bent obliquely, and betwixt the side and bowels famed Anthor's fixed. Anthor's had from Argos travelled far, Alcide's friend and brother of the war, till, turred with toils, fair Italy he chose, and in Evander's palace sought repose. Now, falling by another's wound, his eyes he cast to heave, and on Argos thinks and dies. The pious Trojan then his javelin sent, the shield gave way. Throw, treble plates it went of solid brass, of linen trebly rolled, and 3 bull hides which round the buckler fold. All these it passed, resistless in the course, transpierced his thigh and spent its dying force. The gaping wound gushed out a crimson flood. The Trojan, glad with sight of hostile blood, his falchion drew, to closer fight addressed, and with new force his fainting foe oppressed. His father's peril Lausus viewed with grief. He sighed, he wept, he ran to his relief. And here, heroic youth, 'tis here I must to thy immortal memory be just, and sing an act so noble and so new, posterity will scarce believe 'tis true. Pained with his wound and useless for the fight, the father sought to save himself by flight. Encumbered, slow he dragged the spear along, which pierced his thigh, and in his buckler hung. The pious youth, resolved on death, below the lifted sword springs forth to face the foe, protects his parent, and prevents the blow. Shouts of applause ran ringing through the field, to see the son the vanquished father shield. All, furred with generous indignation, strive, and with a storm of darts to distance drive the Trojan chief, who, held at bay from far, on his Vulcanian orb sustained the war. As when thick hail comes rattling in the wind, the ploughman, passenger, and laboring hind for shelter to the neighboring covert fly, or housed, or safe in hollow caverns lie. But that o'erblown when heaved above 'em smiles, return to travel and renew their toils. Aeneas thus, o'erwhelmed on every side, the storm of darts, undaunted, did abide, and thus to Lausus loud with friendly threatening cried, "Why wilt thou rush to certain death and rage in rash attempts, beyond thy tender age, betrayed by pious love?" Nor, thus forborne, the youth desists, but with insulting scorn provokes the lingering prince, whose patience, turred, gave place, and all his breast with fury furred. For now the fates prepared their sharpened shears, and lifted high the flaming sword appears, which, full descending with a frightful sway throw, shield and corslet forked impetuous way, and buried deep in his fair bosom lay. The purple streams throw the thin armor strove, and drenched embroidered coat his mother wove, and life at length forsook his heaving heart, loth from so sweet a mansion to depart. But when with blood and paleness all o'erspread, the pious prince beheld young Lausus dead, he grieved, he wept. The sight and image brought of his own filial love, a sadly pleasing thought, then stretched his hand to hold him up and said, "Poor hapless youth, what praises can be paid to love so great, to such transcendent store of early worth and sure presage of more? Except whate'er Aeneas can afford, untouched thy arms, untaken be thy sword, and all that please thee living still remain inviolate and sacred to the slain. Thy body on thy parents I bestow, to rest thy soul at least, if shadows know, or have a sense of human things below, there to thy fellow ghosts with glory tell, 'Twas by the great Aeneas' hand I fell." With this, his distant friends he beckons near, provokes their duty and prevents their fear. Himself assists to lift him from the ground, with clotted locks, and blood that welled from out the wound. Meantime his father, now no father, stood, and washed his wounds by Tiber's yellow flood, oppressed with anguish, panting and o'erspent. His fainting limbs against an oak he leant. A bough his brazen helmet did sustain, his heavier arms lay scattered on the plain. A chosen train of youth around him stand, his drooping head was rested on his hand, his grisly beard his pensive bosom sought, and all on Lausus ran his restless thought. Careful, concerned his danger to prevent, he much inquired, and many a message sent to warn him from the field. Alas! In vain, behold, his mournful followers bear him slain, o'er his broad shield still gushed the yawning wound, and drew a bloody trail along the ground. Far off he heard their cries, far off divined the dire event with a foreboding mind. With dust he sprinkled first his hoary head, then both his lifted hands to heave he spread. Last, the dear corpse embracing, thus he said, "What joys, alas, could this frail being give, that I have been so covetous to live, to see my son, and such a son, resign his life, a ransom for preserving mine, and am I then preserved, and art thou lost? How much too dear has that redemption cost? 'Tis now my bitter banishment I feel, this is a wound too deep for time to heal. My guilt thy growing virtues did defame, my blackness blotted thy unblemished name. Chased from a throne, abandoned and exiled for foul misdeeds, were punishments too mild. I owed my people these, and from their hate, with less resentment could have borne my fate. And yet I live, and yet sustain the sight of hated men and of more hated light, but will not long." With that he raised from ground his fainting limbs, that staggered with his wound, yet, with a mind resolved and unappalled with pains or perils, for his courser called well-mouthed, well-managed, whom himself did dress with daily care, and mounted with success, his aid in arms, his ornament in peace. Soothing his courage with a gentle stroke, the steed seemed sensible while thus he spoke. "O Robus, we have lived too long for me, if life and long were terms that could agree. This day thou either shalt bring back the head and bloody trophies of the Trojan dead, this day thou either shalt revenge my woe for murdered Lausus on his cruel foe, or, if inexorable fate deny our conquest, with thy conquered master die, for, after such a lord I rest secure, thou wilt no foreign reins or Trojan load endure." He said, And straight officious courser kneels to take his wonted weight. His hands he fills with pointed javelins. On his head he lacked his glittering helm, which terribly was gracked with waving horsehair. Nodding from afar, then spurred his thundering steed amidst the war. Love, anguish, wrath, and grief, to madness wrought despair and secret shame and conscious thought of inborn worth. His laboring soul oppressed, rolled in his eyes and ragged within his breast. Then loud he called Aeneas thrice by name. The loud repeated voice to glad Aeneas came. Great Jove, he said, and the far-shooting god, inspire thy mind to make thy challenge good. He spoke no more, but hastened, void of fear, and threatened with his long protended spear. To whom Mezentius thus: Thy vaunts are vain, my losses lies extended on the plain he's lost. Thy conquest is already won, the wretched sire is murdered in the sun, nor fate I fear, but all the gods defy. Forbear thy threats. My busness is to die, but first receive this parting legacy, he said, and straight a whirling dart he sent, another after and another went. Round in a spacious ring he rides the field, and vainly plies impenetrable shield. Thrice rode he round, and thrice Aeneas wheeled, turned as he turned. The golden orb withstood the strokes and bore about an iron wood, impatient of delay and weary grown, still to defend, and to defend alone, to wrench the darts which in his buckler light, urged and o'erlabored in unequal fight. At length resolved, he throws with all his force full at the temples of the warrior horse. Just where the stroke was aimed, unerring spear made way, and stood transfixed thro' either ear. Seized with unwonted pain, suppressed with fright, the wounded steed curvets and, raised upright, lights on his feet before. His hoofs behind spring up in air aloft and lash the wind. Down comes the rider headlong from his height. His horse came after with unwieldy weight, and floundering forward, pitching on his head, his lord's encumbered shoulder overlaid. From either host, the mingled shouts and cries of Trojans and Rutulians rend the skies. Aeneas, hastening, waved his fatal sword high o'er his head with this reproachful word: Now, where are now thy vaunts, the fierce disdain of proud Mezentius and the lofty strain? Struggling and wildly staring on the skies, with scarce recovered sight he thus replies: Why these insulting words, this waste of breath, to souls undaunted and secure of death? 'Tis no dishonor for the brave to die, nor came I here with hope of victory, nor ask I life, nor fought with that design. As I had used my fortune, use thou thine. My dying son contracted no such band. The gift is hateful from his murderer's hand. For this only favor let me sue, if pity can to conquered foes be due, refuse it not. But let my body have the last retreat of humankind. A grave too well I know insulting people's hate. Protect me from their vengeance after fate. This refuge for my poor remains provide, and lay my much-loved losses by my side, he said, and to the sword his throat applied. The crimson stream disdained his arms around, and the disdainful soul came rushing thro' the wound. Book 11. The Argument. Aeneas erects a trophy of the spoils of Mezentius, grants a truce for burying the dead, and sends home the body of Pallas with great solemnity. Latinus calls a council to propose offers of peace to Aeneas, which occasions great animosity betwixt Turnus and Drances. In the meantime there is a sharp engagement of the horse, wherein Camilla signalizes herself, is killed, and the Latin troops are entirely defeated. Scarce had the rosy morning raised her head above the waves and left her watery bed, the pious chief, whom double cares attend for his unburied soldiers and his friend, yet first to heave and performed a victor's vows. He barred an ancient oak of all her boughs, then on a rising ground the trunk he placked, which with the spoils of his dead foe he gracked. The coat of arms by proud Mezentius worn, now on a naked snag in triumph borne, was hung on high, and glittered from afar, a trophy sacred to the god of war. Above his arms, fixed on the leafless wood, appeared his plumy crest, besmeared with blood. His brazen buckler on the left was seen, truncheons of shivered lances hung between, and on the right was placed his corslet, bored, and to the neck was tied his unavailing sword. A crowd of chiefs enclosed the godlike man, who thus, conspicuous in the midst, began: Our toils, my friends, are crowned with sure success. The greater part performed, achieve the less. Now follow cheerful to the trembling town, press but an entrance and presume it won. Fear is no more, for fierce Mezentius lies, as the first fruits of war, a sacrifice. Turnus shall fall extended on the plain, and in this omen is already slain. Prepared in arms, pursue your happy chance, that none unwarned may plead his ignorance. And I, at heaven's appointed hour, may find your warlike ensigns waving in the wind. Meantime the rites and funeral pomps prepare, due to your dead companions of the war. The last respect the living can bestow to shield their shadows from contempt below. That conquered earth be theirs, for which they fought, and which for us with their own blood they bought. But first the corpse of our unhappy friend to the sad city of Evander send, who, not inglorious in his age's bloom, was hurried hence by too severe a doom. Thus, weeping while he spoke, he took his way where, new in death, lamented Pallas lay. Acotes watched the corpse, whose youth deserved the father's trust, and now the son he served with equal faith but less auspicious care. Attendants of the slain his sorrow share. A troop of Trojans mixed with these appear, and mourning matrons with disheveled hair. Soon as the prince appears, they raise a cry, all beat their breasts, and echoes rend the sky. They rear his drooping forehead from the ground. But when Aeneas viewed the grisly wound which Pallas in his manly bosom bore, and the fair flesh distained with purple gore, first, melting into tears, the pious man deplored so sad a sight, then thus began: Unhappy youth, when fortune gave thee rest of my full wishes, she refused the best she came, but brought not thee along to bless my longing eyes and share in my success. She grudged thy safe return, the triumphs due to prosperous valor in the public view. Not thus I promised, when thy father lent thy needless succor with a sad consent, embracked me, parting for Etrurian land, and sent me to possess a large command. He warned, and from his own experience told, our foes were warlike, disciplined, and bold. And now perhaps, in hopes of thy return, rich odors on his loaded altars burn, while we, with vain officious pomp, prepare to send him back his portion of the war, a bloody breathless body, which can owe no farther debt, but to the powers below. The wretched father, ere his race is run, shall view the funeral honors of his son. These are my triumphs of the Latian war, fruits of my plighted faith and boasted care. And yet, unhappy sire, thou shalt not see a son whose death discracked his ancestry. Thou shalt not blush, old man, however grieved, thy Pallas no dishonest wound received. He died no death to make thee wish too late. Thou hadst not lived to see his shameful fate. But what a champion has Ausonian coast, and what a friend hast thou, Ascanius, lost. Thus having mourned, he gave the word around, to raise the breathless body from the ground, and chose 1,000 horse, the flower of all his warlike troops, to wait the funeral, to bear him back and share Evander's grief. A well-becoming but a weak relief. Of oaken twigs they twist an easy bier, then on their shoulders the sad burden rear. The body on this rural hearse is borne, strewed leaves and funeral greens the bier adorn. All pale he lies and looks a lovely flower, new cropped by virgin hands to dress the bower, unfaded yet, but yet unfed below, no more to Mother Earth or the green stern shall owe. Then 2 fair vests, of wondrous work and cost, of purple woven, and with gold embossed for ornament the Trojan hero brought, which with her hand Sidonian Dido wrought. 1 vest arrayed the corpse, and 1 they spread o'er his closed eyes and wrapped around his head, that, when the yellow hair in flame should fall, the catching fire might burn the golden caul. Besides, the spoils of foes in battle slain, when he descended on the Latian plain, arms, trappings, horses, by the hearse are led in long array. Achievements of the dead. Then, pinioned with their hands behind, appear unhappy captives, marching in the rear appointed offerings in the victor's name, to sprinkle with their blood the funeral flame. Inferior trophies by the chiefs are borne, gauntlets and helms their loaded hands adorn, and fair inscriptions fixed, and titles read of Latian leaders conquered by the dead. Acotes on his pupil's corpse attends with feeble steps, supported by his friends, pausing at every pace in sorrow drowned. Betwixt their arms he sinks upon the ground, where groveling while he lies in deep despair, he beats his breast and rends his hoary hair. The champion's chariot next is seen to roll, besmeared with hostile blood and honorably foul. To close the pomp Aethon, the steed of state, is led, the funerals of his lord to wait. Stripped of his trappings, with a sullen pace he walks, and the big tears run rolling down his face. The lance of Pallas and the crimson crest are borne behind. The victor sees the rest. The march begins. The trumpets hoarsely sound. The pikes and lances trail along the ground. Thus while the Trojan and Arcadian horse to Pallantean towers direct their course in long procession ranked, the pious chief stopped in the rear and gave a vent to grief. The public care, he said, which war attends diverts our present woes, at least suspends. Peace with the manes of great Pallas dwell, hail, holy relics, and a last farewell. He said no more, but inly through he mourned, restrained his tears, and to the camp returned. Now suppliants from Laurentum sent, demand a truce, with olive branches in their hand, obtest his clemency, and from the plain beg leave to draw the bodies of their slain. They plead, that none those common rights deny to conquered foes that in fair battle die. All cause of hate was ended in their death, nor could he war with bodies void of breath. A king, they hopped, would hear a king's request, whose son he once was called and once his guest. Their suit, which was too just to be denied, the hero grants, and farther thus replied: O Latian princes, how severe a fate in causeless quarrels has involved your state, and armed against an unoffending man, who sought your friendship ere the war began, you beg a truce, which I would gladly give, not only for the slain but those who live. I came not hither but by heaven's command, and sent by fate to share the Latian land. Nor wage I wars unjust. Your king denied my proffered friendship, and my promised bride left me for Turnus. Turnus then should try his cause in arms, to conquer or to die. My right and his are in dispute. The slain fell without fault, our quarrel to maintain. In equal arms let us alone contend, and let him vanquish whom his fates befriend. This is the way, so tell him, to possess the royal virgin and restore the peace. Bear this message back with ample leave, that your slain friends may funeral rites receive. Thus having said, ambassadors, amazed, stood mute a while and on each other gazed. Drances, their chief, who harbored in his breast long hate to Turnus as his foe professed, broke silence first, and to the godlike man with graceful action bowing thus began: Auspicious prince, in arms a mighty name, but yet whose actions far transcend your fame, would I your justice or your force express, thought can but equal, and all words are less. Your answer we shall thankfully relate, and favors granted to the Latian state. If wished success our labor shall attend, think peace concluded and the king your friend. Let Turnus leave the realm to your command, and seek alliance in some other land. Build you the city which your fates assign. We shall be proud in the great work to join. Thus Drances, and his words so well persuade the rest empowered, that soon a truce is made. 12 days the term allowed, and during those Latians and Trojans, now no longer foes, mixed in the woods, for funeral piles prepare to fell the timber and forget the war. Loud axes throw, the groaning groves resound, oak, mountain ash, and poplar spread the ground, first fall from high, and some the trunks receive in loaden wains, with wedges some they cleave. And now the fatal news by fame is blown thro' the short circuit of Arcadian town, of Pallas slain by fame, which just before his triumphs on distended pinions bore. Rushing from out the gate, the people stand, each with a funeral flambeau in his hand. Wildly they stare, distracted with amaze. The fields are lightened with a fiery blaze that cast a sullen splendor on their friends, the marching troop which their dead prince attends. Both parties meet. They raise a doleful cry. The matrons from the walls with shrieks reply, and their mixed mourning rends the vaulted sky. The town is filled with tumult and with tears till the loud clamors reach Evander's ears. Forgetful of his state, he runs along with a disordered pace and cleaves the throng, falls on the corpse, and groaning there he lies with silent grief that speaks but at his eyes. Short sighs and sobs succeed, till sorrow breaks a passage, and at once he weeps and speaks. O Pallas, thou hast failed thy plighted word to fight with caution, not to tempt the sword. I warned thee, but in vain. For well I knew what perils youthful ardor would pursue, that boiling blood would carry thee too far, young as thou wert in dangers raw to war. O cursed essay of arms, disastrous doom, prelude of bloody fields and fights to come, hard elements of unauspicious war, vain vows to heave and unavailing care. Thrice happy thou, dear partner of my bed, whose holy soul the stroke of fortune fled, precious of ills and leaving me behind, to drink the dregs of life by fate assigned. Beyond the goal of nature I have gone, my Pallas late set out but reached too soon, if for my league against Ausonian state, amidst their weapons I had found my fate, deserved from them. Then I had been returned a breathless victor, and my son had mourned. Yet will I not my Trojan friend upbraid, nor grudge alliance I so gladly made. 'Twas not his fault, my Pallas fell so young, but my own crime for having lived too long. Yet, since the gods had destined him to die, at least he led the way to victory. First for his friends he won the fatal shore, and sent whole herds of slaughtered foes before, a death too great, too glorious to deplore. Nor will I add new honors to thy grave, content with those the Trojan hero gave. That funeral pomp thy Phrygian friends designed, in which the Tuscan chiefs and army joined. Great spoils and trophies, gained by thee they bear. Then let thy own achievements be thy share. Even thou, O Turnus, hadst a trophy stood, whose mighty trunk had better gracked the wood, if Pallas had arrived with equal length of years to match thy bulk with equal strength. But why, unhappy man, dost thou detain these troops, to view the tears thou shedst in vain? Go, friends, this message to your lord relate. Tell him that if I bear my bitter fate, and after Pallas' death live lingering on, tease to behold his vengeance for my son, I stay for Turnus, whose devoted head is owing to the living and the dead. My son and I expect it from his hand. Tease all that he can give, or we demand. Joy is no more, but I would gladly go to greet my Pallas with such news below. The morn had now dispelled the shades of night, restoring toils when she restored the light. The Trojan king and Tuscan chief command to raise the piles along the winding strand. Their friends convey the dead funeral fires. Black smoldering smoke from the green wood expires. The light of heaven is chalked, and the new day retires. Then thrice around the kindled piles they go, for ancient custom had ordained it so. Thrice horse and foot about the fires are led, and thrice with loud laments they hail the dead. Tears, trickling down their breasts, bedew the ground, and drums and trumpets mix their mournful sound. Amid the blaze, their pious brethren throw the spoils, in battle taken from the foe, helms, bits embossed, and swords of shining steel. One casts a target, one a chariot wheel, some to their fellows their own arms restore. The falchions which in luckless fight they bore, their bucklers pierced, their darts bestowed in vain, and shivered lances gathered from the plain. Whole herds of offered bulls about the fire, and bristled boars and woolly sheep expire. Around the piles a careful troop attends, to watch the wasting flames, and weep their burning friends, lingering along the shore, till dewy night new decks the face of heaven with starry light. The conquered Latians, with like pious care, piles without number for their dead prepare. Part in the places where they fell are laid, and part are to the neighboring fields conveyed. The corps of kings and captains of renown, borne off in state, are buried in the town. The rest, unhonored and without a name, are cast a common heap to feed the flame. Trojans and Latians vie with like desires to make the field of battle shine with fires, and the promiscuous blaze to heaven aspires. Now had the morning thrice renewed the light, and thrice dispelled the shadows of the night, when those who round the wasted fires remain perform the last sad office to the slain. They rake the yet warm ashes from below these, and the bones unburned in earth bestow. These relics with their country rites they grace, and raise a mount of turf to mark the place. But in the palace of the king appears a scene more solemn, and a pomp of tears. Maids, matrons, widows mix their common moans, orphans their sires, and sires lament their sons. All in that universal sorrow share, and curse the cause of this unhappy war. A broken league, a bride unjustly sought, a crown usurped, which with their blood is bought. These are the crimes with which they load the name of Turnus, and on him alone exclaim, "Let him who lords it o'er Ausonian land engage the Trojan hero hand to hand. His is the gain, our lot is but to serve. 'Tis just the sway he seeks he should deserve." This Drances aggravates, and adds with spite, his foe expects and dares him to the fight. Nor Turnus wants a party to support his cause and credit in the Latian court. His former acts secure his present fame, and the queen shades him with her mighty name. While thus their factious minds with fury burn, the legates from Aetolian prince return. Sad news they bring, that after all the cost and care employed, their embassy is lost, that Diomedes refused his aid in war, unmoved with presents and as deaf to prayer. Some new alliance must elsewhere be sought, or peace with Troy on hard conditions bought. Latinus, sunk in sorrow, finds too late, a foreign son is pointed out by fate. Until Aeneas shall Lavinia wed, the wrath of heaven is hovering o'er his head. The gods, he saw, espouse the juster side, when late their titles in the field were tried, witness the fresh laments and funeral tears undried. Thus, full of anxious thought, he summons all the Latian senate to the council hall. The princes come, commanded by their head, and crowd the paths that to the palace lead. Supreme in power and reverenced for his years, he takes the throne and in the midst appears. Majestically sad he sits in state, and bids his envoys their success relate. When Venulus began, the murmuring sound was hushed, and sacred silence reigned around. "We have," said he, "performed your high command, and passed with peril a long tract of land. We reached the place desired. With wonder filled, the Grecian tents and rising towers beheld. Great Diomedes has compassed round with walls the city, which Argyripa he calls from his own Argus named. We touched, with joy, the royal hand that razed unhappy Troy. When introduced, our presence first we bring, then crave an instant audience from the king. His leave obtained, our native soil we name, and tell important cause for which we came." Attentively he heard us, while we spoke, then with soft accents and a pleasing look made this return. "Ausonian race, of old renowned for peace, and for an age of gold, what madness has your altered minds possessed, to change for war hereditary rest, solicit arms unknown, and tempt the sword, a needless ill your ancestors abhorred? We for myself I speak, and all the name of Grecians, who to Troy's destruction came, omitting those who were in battle slain, or borne by rolling Simwa to the main, not one but suffered, and too dearly bought the prize of honor which in arms he sought, some doomed to death and some in exile driven, outcasts, abandoned by the care of heathen, so worn, so wretched, so despised a crew, as even old Priam might with pity view. Witness the vessels by Minerva tossed in storms, the vengeful Capharean coast Euboean rocks, the prince, whose brother led our armies to revenge his injured bed, in Egypt lost. Ulysses with his men have seen Charybdis and the Cyclops' den. Why should I name Idomeneus, in vain restored to scepters and expelled again, or young Achilles by his rival slain? Even he, the king of men, the foremost name of all the Greeks, and most renowned by fame, the proud revenger of another's wife, yet by his own adulteress lost his life, fell at his threshold, and the spoils of Troy the foul polluters of his bed enjoy. The gods have envied me the sweets of life, my much-loved country and my more loved wife, banished from both I mourn, while in the sky transformed to birds my lost companions fly, hovering about the coasts, they make their moan, and cuff the cliffs with pinions not their own. What squalid specters in the dead of night break my short sleep and skim before my sight? I might have promised to myself those harms, mad as I was, when I, with mortal arms, presumed against immortal powers to move, and violate with wounds the queen of love. Such arms this hand shall never more employ, no hate remains with me to ruin Troy. I war not with its dust, nor am I glad to think of past events, or good or bad. Your presence I return. Whate'er you bring to buy my friendship, send the Trojan king. We met in fight. I know him to my cost, with what a whirling force his lance he tossed, heavens. What a spring was in his arm to throw, How high he held his shield and rose at every blow. Had Troy product 2 more his match in might, they would have changed the fortune of the fight. Invasion of the Greeks had been returned, our empire wasted, and our cities burned. The long defense the Trojan people made, the war protracted and the siege delayed, were due to Hector's and this hero's hand. Both brave alike and equal in command, Aeneas, not inferior in the field, in pious reverence to the gods excelled. Make peace, ye Latians, and avoid with care impending dangers of a fatal war. He said no more, but with this cold excuse refused alliance and advised a truce. Thus Venulus concluded his report. A jarring murmur filled the factious court as, when a torrent rolls with rapid force, and dashes o'er the stones that stop the course, the flood, constrained within a scanty space, roars horrible along uneasy race, white foam in gathering eddies floats around, the rocky shores rebellow to the sound. The murmur ceased. Then from his lofty throne the king invoked the gods and thus begun. I wish, ye Latins, what we now debate had been resolved before it was too late. Much better had it been for you and me, unforked by this our last necessity, to have been earlier wise than now to call a council when the foe surrounds the wall. O citizens, we wage unequal war with men not only heathen's peculiar care, but heathen's own race, unconquered in the field, or conquered, yet unknowing how to yield. What hopes you had in Diome's, lay down. Our hopes must center on ourselves alone. Yet those how feeble and indeed how vain, you see too well. Nor need my words explain, vanquished without resource, laid flat by fate, factions within, a foe without the gate, not but I grant that all performed their parts with manly force and with undaunted hearts. With our united strength the war we wagged, with equal numbers, equal arms, and gagged. You see event. Now hear what I propose to save our friends and satisfy our foes. A tract of land the Latins have possessed along the Tiber, stretching to the west, which now Rutulians and Orincans till, and their mixed cattle graze the fruitful hill. Those mountains filled with firs, that lower land, if you consent the Trojan shall command, called into part of what is ours, and there, on terms agreed, the common country share. There let them build and settle if they please, unless they choose once more to cross the seas in search of seats remote from Italy, and from unwelcome inmates set us free. Then twice 10 galleys let us build with speed, or twice as many more if more they need. Materials are at hand. A well-grown wood runs equal with the margin of the flood. Let them the number and the form assign. The care and cost of all the stores be mine. To treat the peace, 100 senators shall be commissioned hence with ample powers, with olive the presents they shall bear, a purple robe, a royal ivory chair, and all the marks of sway that Latian monarchs wear, and sums of gold. Among yourselves debate this great affair, and save the sinking state. Then Drances took the word, who grudged, long since, the rising glories of the Daunian prince. Factious and rich, bold at the council board, but cautious in the field, he shunned the sword, a close caballer and tongue-valiant lord. Noble his mother was, and near the throne. But what his father's parentage, unknown, he rose and took advantage of the times, to load young Turnus with invidious crimes. Such truths, O king, said he, your words contain, as strike the sense, and all replies are vain, nor are your loyal subjects now to seek what common needs require, but fear to speak. Let him give leave of speech, that haughty man, whose pride this unauspicious war began, for whose ambition, let me dare to say, fear set apart. Though death is in my way, the plains of Latium run with blood around. So many valiant heroes bite the ground. Dejected grief in every face appears, a town in mourning and a land in tears, while he, undoubted author of our harms, the man who menaces the gods with arms, yet after all his boasts, forsook the fight, and sought his safety in ignoble flight. Now, best of kings, since you propose to send such bounteous presents to your Trojan friend, add yet a greater at our joint request, one which he values more than all the rest. Give him the fair Lavinia for his bride. With that alliance let the league be tied, and for the bleeding land a lasting peace provide. Let insolence no longer awe the throne, but with a father's right bestow your own. For this maligner of the general good, if still we fear his force, he must be wooed. His haughty godhead we with prayers implore, your scepter to release and our just rights restore. O cursed cause of all our ills, must we wage wars unjust and fall in fight for thee? What right hast thou to rule the Latian state, and send us out to meet our certain fate? 'Tis a destructive war. From Turnus, hand our peace and public safety we demand. Let the fair bride to the brave chief remain. If not, the peace without the pledge is vain. Turnus, I know you think me not your friend, nor will I much with your belief contend. I beg your greatness not to give thee law in others' realms, but beaten to withdraw. Pity your own, or pity our estate, nor twist our fortunes with your sinking fate. Your interest is, the war should never cease, but we have felt enough to wish the peace. A land exhausted to the last remains, depopulated towns and driven plains. Yet if desire of fame and thirst of power, a beauteous princess with a crown and dower, so fire your mind, in arms assert your right, and meet your foe who dares you to the fight. Mankind, it seems, is made for you alone, we but the slaves who mount you to the throne, a base ignoble crowd without a name, unwept, unworthy of the funeral flame, by duty bound to forfeit each his life, that Turnus may possess a royal wife. Permit not, mighty man, so mean a crew should share such triumphs, and detain from you the post of honor, your undoubted due. Rather alone your matchless force employ, to merit what alone you must enjoy. These words, so full of malice mixed with art, inflamed with rage the youthful hero's heart. Then, groaning from the bottom of his breast, he heaved for wind, and thus his wrath expressed. You, Drances, never want a stream of words then, when the public need requires our swords. First in the council hall to steer the state, and ever foremost in a tongue debate. While our strong walls secure us from the foe ere yet with blood our ditches overflow. But let the potent orator declaim, and with the brand of coward blot my name. Free leave is given him, when his fatal hand has covered with more core the sanguine strand, and high as mine his touring trophies stand. If any doubt remains, who dares the most, let us decide it at the Trojans' cost, and issue both abreast where honor calls. Foes are not far to seek without the walls, unless his noisy tongue can only fight, and feet were given him but to speed his flight. I beaten from the field, I forked away, who but so known a dastard dares to say, had he but even beheld the fight, his eyes had witnessed for me what his tongue denies. What heaps of Trojans by this hand were slain, and how the bloody Tiber swelled the main. All saw, but he, Arcadian troops retire in scattered squadrons, and their prince expire. The giant brothers in their camp have found. I was not forked with ease to quit my ground. Not such the Trojans tried me when enclosed, I singly their united arms opposed, first forked an entrance through their thick array, then, glutted with their slaughter, freed my way. 'Tis a destructive war, so let it be, but to the Phrygian pirate and to thee. Meantime proceed to fill the people's ears with false reports, their minds with panic fears. Extol the strength of a twice-conquered race, our foes encourage, and our friends debase. Believe thy fables, and the Trojan town triumphant stands. The Grecians are o'erthrown, suppliant at Hector's feet Achilles lies, and domed from fierce Aeneas flies. Say rapid Aufidus with awful dread runs backward from the sea, and hides his head, when the great Trojan on his bank appears, for that's as true as thy dissembled fears of my revenge. Dismiss that vanity, thou, Drances, art below a death from me. Let that vile soul in that vile body rest, the lodging is well worthy of the guest. Now, royal father, to the present state of our affairs, and of this high debate, if in your arms thus early you defied, and think your fortune is already tried, if one defeat has brought us down so low as never more in fields to meet the foe, then I conclude for peace. 'Tis time to treat, and lie like vassals at the victor's feet. But oh, if any ancient blood remains, one drop of all our fathers in our veins, that man would I prefer before the rest, who dared his death with an undaunted breast, who comely fell by no dishonest wound, to shun that sight and dying gnawed the ground. But if we still have fresh recruits in store, if our confederates can afford us more, if the contended field we bravely fought, and not a bloodless victory was bought, their losses equaled ours. And for their slain with equal fires they filled the shining plain. Why thus, unforked, should we so tamely yield, and ere the trumpet sounds, resign the field? Good unexpected, evils unforeseen appear by turns, as fortune shifts the scene. Some, raised aloft, come tumbling down amen, then fall so hard they bound and rise again. If Diomed refuse his aid to lend, the great Messapus yet remains our friend. Tolumnius, who foretells events, is ours. Italian chiefs and princes join their powers, nor least in number, nor in name the last. Your own brave subjects have your cause embracked above the rest. The Volscian Amazon contains an army in herself alone, and heads a squadron, terrible to sight, with glittering shields in brazen armor bright. Yet if the foe a single fight demand, and I alone the public peace withstand, if you consent, he shall not be refuzzed, nor find a hand to victory unused. This new Achilles, let him take the field with faded armor and Vulcanian shield. For you, my royal father and my fame, I, Turnus, not the least of all my name, devote my soul. He calls me hand to hand, and I alone will answer his demand. Drances shall rest secure, and neither share the danger, nor divide the prize of war. While they debate, nor these nor those will yield, Aeneas draws his forces to the field and moves his camp. The scouts with flying speed return, and through the frighted city spread unpleasing news. The Trojans are disgrayed, in battle marching by the river side and bending to the town. They take alarm, some tremble, some are bold, all in confusion arm. Impetuous youth press forward to the field. They clash the sword and clatter on the shield. The fearful matrons raise a screaming cry. Old feeble men with fainter groans reply. A jarring sound results, and mingles in the sky like that of swans remurmuring to the floods, or birds of differing kinds in hollow woods. Turnus occasion takes and cries aloud. Talk on, ye quaint haranguers of the crowd, declaim in praise of peace when danger calls, and the fierce foes in arms approach the walls. He said, and turning short with speedy pace casts back a scornful glance and quits the place. Thou, Volusus, the Volscian troops command to mount, and lead thyself our Ardean band. Messapus and Catulus, post your force along the fields to charge the Trojan horse. Some guard the passes, others man the wall, drawn up in arms, the rest attend my call. They swarm from every quarter of the town, and with disordered haste the ramparts crown. Good old Latinus, when he saw, too late, the gathering storm just breaking on the state, dismissed the council till a fitter time, and owned his easy temper as his crime, who, forked against his reason, had complied to break the treaty for the promised bride. Some help to sink new trenches, others aid to ram the stones or raise the palisade. Hoarse trumpets sound alarm. Around the walls runs a distracted crew, whom their last labor calls. A sad procession in the streets is seen of matrons that attend the mother queen. High in her chair she sits, and at her side with downcast eyes appears the fatal bride. They mount the cliff, where palace temple stands, prayers in their mouths and presents in their hands. With censers first they fume the sacred shrine, then in this common supplication join. O patroness of arms, unspotted maid, propitious hear and lend thy Latins aid. Break short the pirate's lance, pronounce his fate, and lay the Phrygian low before the gate. Now Turnus arms for fight. His back and breast well-tempered steel and scaly brass invest. The cuishes which his brawny thighs enfold are mingled metal damasked o'er with gold. His faithful falchion sits upon his side, nor casque nor crest his manly features hide, but bare to view amid surrounding friends, with godlike grace he from the tower descends. Exulting in his strength, he seems to dare his absent rival and to promise war. Freed from his keepers thus with broken reins, the wanton courser prances o'er the plains, or in the pride of youth o'erleaps the mounds, and snuffs the females in forbidden grounds, or seeks his watering in the well-known flood to quench his thirst and cool his fiery blood. He swims luxuriant in the liquid plain, and o'er his shoulder flows his waving mane. He neighs, he snorts, he bears his head on high, before his ample chest the frothy waters fly. Soon as the prince appears without the gate, The Volscians, with their virgin leader, wait his last commands. Then with a graceful mien lights from her lofty steed the warrior queen. Her squadron imitates, and each descends, whose common suit Camilla thus commends. If sense of honor, if a soul secure of inborn worth that can all tests endure, can promise aught, or on itself rely greatly to dare, to conquer or to die, then I alone, sustained by these, will meet the Tyrrhene troops and promise their defeat. Ours be the danger, ours the sole renown. You, general, stay behind and guard the town. Turnus awhile stood mute with glad surprise, and on the fierce virago fixed his eyes, then thus returned. O grace of Italy, with what becoming thanks can I reply? Not only words lie laboring in my breast, but thought itself is by thy praise oppressed. Yet rob me not of all, but let me join my toils, my hazard, and my fame with thine. The Trojan, not in stratagem unskilled, sends his light horse before to scour the field, himself, through steep ascents and thorny brakes, a larger compass to the city takes. This news my scouts confirm, and I prepare to foil his cunning and his force to dare, with chosen foot his passage to forelay, and place an ambush in the winding way. Thou, with thy Volscians, face the Tuscan horse. The brave Messapus shall thy troops enforce with those of Tibur, and the Latian band, subjected all to thy supreme command. This said, he warns Messapus to the war, then every chief exhorts with equal care. All thus encouraged, his own troops he joins, and hastes to prosecute his deep designs. Enclosed with hills, a winding valley lies, by nature formed for fraud and fitted for surprise. A narrow track, by human steps untrod, leads, through perplexing thorns, to this obscure abode. High o'er the vale a steepy mountain stands, whence the surveying sight the nether ground commands. The top is level, an offensive seat of war, and from the war a safe retreat, for, on the right and left, is room to press the foes at hand, or from afar distress, to drive 'em headlong downward and to pour on their descending backs a stony shower. Thither young Turnus took the well-known way, possessed the pass, and in blind ambush lay. Meantime Latonian Phoebe from the skies beheld approaching war with hateful eyes, and called the light-foot Opes to her aid, her most beloved and ever-trusty maid. Then with a sigh began, Camilla goes to meet her death amidst her fatal foes, the nymphs I loved of all my mortal train, invested with Diana's arms in vain. Nor is my kindness for the virgin new, 'twas born with her, and with her years it grew. Her father met abuse when forked away from old Privernum, for tyrannic sway snatched up and salved from his prevailing foes. This tender babe, companion of his woes, Casmilla was her mother, but he drowned one hissing letter in a softer sound and called Camilla. Thro' the woods he flies, wrapped in his robe the royal infant lies, his foes in sight. He mends his weary pace, with shout and clamors they pursue the chase. The banks of Amasene at length he gains. The raging flood his farther flight restrains, raised o'er the borders with unusual rains. Prepared to plunge into the stream, he fears, not for himself but for the charge he bears. Anxious, he stops a while and thinks in haste, then, disparate in distress, resolves at last. A knotty lance of well-boiled oak he bore, the middle part with cork he covered o'er. He closed the child within the hollow space, with twigs of bending osier bound the case. Then pawed the spear, heavy with human weight, and thus invoked my favor for the freight. Accept, great goddess of the woods, he said, sent by her sire, this dedicated maid throw, ere she flies a suppliant to thy shrine, and the first weapons that she knows are thine, he said. And with full force the spear he threw, above the sounding waves Camilla flew. Then pressed by foes, he stemmed the stormy tide, and gained, by stress of arms, the farther side. His fastened spear he pulled from out the ground, and victor of his vows his infant nymph unbound, nor after that in towns which walls enclose would trust his hunted life amidst his foes. But rough in open air he chose to lie, earth was his couch, his covering was the sky. On hills unshorn or in a desert den, he shunned the dire society of men. A shepherd's solitary life he led, his daughter with the milk of mares he fed. The dugs of bears and every salvage beast he drew, and thro' her lips the liquor pressed. The little Amazon could scarcely go. He loads her with a quiver and a bow, and that she might her staggering steps command, he with a slender javelin fills her hand. Her flowing hair no golden fillet bound, nor swept her trailing robe the dusty ground. Instead of these, a tiger's hide o'erspread her back and shoulders, fastened to her head. The flying dart she first attempts to fling, and round her tender temples tossed the sling. Then, as her strength with years increased, began to pierce aloft in air the soaring swan, and from the clouds to fetch the heron and the crane. The Tuscan matrons with each other vied to bless their rival sons with such a bride, but she disdains their love, to share with me the sylvan shades and vowed virginity. And oh, I wish, contented with my cares of salvage spoils, she had not sought the wars. Then had she been of my celestial train, and shunned the fate that dooms her to be slain. But since, opposing heaven's decree, she goes to find her death among forbidden foes, haste with these arms and take thy steepy flight, where with the gods of verse the Latins fight. This bow to thee, this quiver I bequeath, this chosen arrow to revenge her death, by whate'er hand Camilla shall be slain, or of the Trojan or Italian train, let him not pass unpunished from the plain. Then in a hollow cloud, myself will aid to bear the breathless body of my maid. Unspoiled shall be her arms, and unprofaned her holy limbs with any human hand, and in a marble tomb laid in her native land. She said, the faithful nymph descends from high with rapid flight, and cuts the sounding sky. Black clouds and stormy winds around her body fly. By this, the Trojan and the Tuscan horse, drawn up in squadrons, with united force approach the walls. The sprightly coursers bound, press forward on their bits, and shift their ground. Shields, arms, and spears flash horribly from far, and the fields glitter with a waving war. Opposed to these, come on with furious force Messapus, Coras, and the Latian horse, these in the body placked, on either hand sustained and clasped by fair Camilla's band. Advancing in a line, they couch their spears, and less the middle space appears. Thick smoke obscures the field, and scarce are seen the neighing coursers and the shouting men. In distance of their darts they stop their course, then man to man they rush, and horse to horse. The face of heaven their flying javelins hide, and deaths unseen are dealt on either side. Tyrrhenus and Acontius, void of fear, by mettled coursers borne in full career, meet first opposed, and with a mighty shock their horses' heads against each other knock. Far from his steed is fierce Acontius cast, as with an engine's force or lightning's blast, he rolls along in blood and breathes his last. The Latin squadrons take a sudden fright, and sling their shields behind, to save their backs in flight. Spurring at speed to their own walls they drew, close in the rear the Tuscan troops pursue, and urge their flight. Asylas leads the chase till, seized with shame, they wheel about and face, receive their foes and raise a threatening cry. The Tuscans take their turn to fear and fly. So swelling surges, with a thundering roar driven on each other's backs, insult the shore, bound o'er the rocks, encroach upon the land, and far upon the beach eject the sand. Then backward, with a swing, they take their way, repulsed from upper ground, and seek their mother sea. With equal hurry quit invaded shore, and swallow back the sand and stones they spewed before. Twice were the Tuscans masters of the field, twice by the Latins in their turn repelled. Ashamed at length, to the third charge they ran, both hosts resolved and mingled man to man. Now dying groans are heard. The fields are strowed with falling bodies and are drunk with blood. Arms, horses, men on heaps together lie. Confused the fight and more confused the cry. Orsilochus, who durst not press too near strong Remulus, at distance drove his spear, and stuck the steel beneath his horse's ear. Fiery steed, impatient of the wound, curvets, and springing upward with a bound, his helpless lord cast backward on the ground. Catulus pierced Iolaus first, then drew his reeking lance, and at Herminius threw, the mighty champion of the Tuscan crew. His neck and throat unarmed, his head was bare, but shaded with a length of yellow hair. Secure he fought, exposed on every part, a spacious mark for swords and for the flying dart. Across the shoulders came the feathered wound. He fell and doubled to the ground. The sands with streaming blood are sanguine dyed, and death with honor sought on either side. Resistless through the war Camilla rode, in danger unappalled and pleased with blood. One side was bare for her exerted breast, one shoulder with her painted quiver pressed. Now from afar her fatal javelins play, now with her axe's edge she hews her way. Diana's arms upon her shoulder sound, and when too closely pressed, she quits the ground, from her bent bow she sends a backward wound. Her maids in martial pomp on either side, Larina, Tulla, fierce Tarpeia ride, Italians all, in peace their queen's delight, in war the bold companions of the fight. So marched the Thracian Amazons of old, when Thermodon with bloody billows rolled. Such troops as these in shining arms were seen, when Theseus met in fight their maiden queen. Such to the field Penthesilea led from the fierce Virgin when the Grecians fled. With such, returned triumphant from the war, her maids with cries attend the lofty car. They clash with manly force their moony shields, with female shouts resound the Phrygian fields. Who foremost and who last heroic maid, on the cold earth were by thy courage laid, thy spear of mountain ash Eumenius first, with fury driven from side to side transpierced. A purple stream came spouting from the wound, bathed in his blood he lies and bites the ground. Liris and Pegasus at once she slew, the former, as the slackened reins he drew of his faint steed. The latter, as he stretched his arm to prop his friend, the javelin reached. By the same weapon, sent from the same hand, both fall together and both spurn the sand. Amastris next is added to the slain. The rest en route she follows o'er the plain. Tereus, Harpalycus, Demophoon, and Chromes at full speed her fury shun. Of all her deadly darts, not one she lost, each was attended with a Trojan ghost. Young Ornithus bestrode a hunter steed, swift for the chase and of Apulian breed. Him from afar she spied, in arms unknown. O'er his broad back an ox's hide was thrown, his helm a wolf, whose gaping jaws were spread a covering for his cheeks and grinned around his head. He clenched within his hand an iron prong, and towered above the rest, conspicuous in the throng. Him soon she singled from the flying train and slew with ease. Then thus insults the slain: vain hunter, didst thou think through woods to chase the savage herd, a vile and trembling race? Here cease thy vaunts and own my victory. A woman warrior was too strong for thee. Yet if the ghosts demand the conqueror's name, confessing great Camilla, save thy shame. Then Butes and Orsilochus she slew, the bulkiest bodies of the Trojan crew, but Butes breast to breast. The spear descends above the gorget where his helmet ends, and o'er the shield which his left side defends. Orsilochus and she their courses ply. He seems to follow and she seems to fly. But in a narrower ring she makes the race, and then he flies and she pursues the chase. Gathering at length on her deluded foe, she swings her axe and rises to the blow full on the helm behind. With such a sway the weapon falls. The riven steel gives way, he groans, he roars. He sues in vain for grace, brains, mingled with his blood, besmear his face. Astonished Aunus just arrives by chance to see his fall, nor farther dares advance. But fixing on the horrid maid his eye, he stares and shakes and finds it vain to fly, yet like a true Ligurian born to cheat, at least while fortune favored his deceit, cries out aloud: "What courage have you shown, who trust your courser's strength and not your own? Forgo the vantage of your horse, alight, and then on equal terms begin the fight. It shall be seen, weak woman, what you can, when foot to foot you combat with a man," he said. She glows with anger and disdain, dismounts with speed to dare him on the plain, and leaves her horse at large among her train, with her drawn sword defies him to the field, and marching, lifts aloft her maiden shield. The youth, who thought his cunning did succeed, reins round his horse, and urges all his speed, adds the remembrance of the spur, and hides the goring rowels in his bleeding sides. "Vain fool and coward," cries the lofty maid, "caught in the train which thou thyself hast laid. On others practice thy Ligurian arts, thin stratagems and tricks of little hearts are lost on me. Nor shalt thou safe retire, with vaunting lies, to thy fallacious sire." At this so fast her flying feet she sped, that soon she strained beyond his horse's head. Then turning short, at once she seized the rein, and laid the boaster groveling on the plain. Not with more ease the falcon, from above, trusses in middle air the trembling dove. Then plumes the prey in her strong pounces bound, the feathers, foul with blood, come tumbling to the ground. Now mighty Jove, from his superior height, with his broad eye surveys unequal fight. He fires the breast of Trojan with disdain, and sends him to redeem abandoned plain. Betwixt the broken ranks the Tuscan rides, and these encourages, and those he chides, recalls each leader by his name from flight, renews their ardor, and restores the fight. What panic fear has seized your souls? O shame! O brand perpetual of Etrurian name! Cowards incurable, a woman's hand drives, breaks, and scatters your ignoble band. Now cast away the sword and quit the shield. What use of weapons which you dare not wield? Not thus you fly your female foes by night, nor shun the feast when the full bowls invite, when to fat offerings the glad augur calls, and the shrill hornpipe sounds to bacchanals. These are your studied cares, your lewd delight, swift to debauch but slow to manly fight. Thus having said, he spurs amid the foes, not managing the life he meant to lose. The first he found he seized with headlong haste, in his strong gripe and clasped around the waist. 'Twas Venulus, whom from his horse he tore, and laid athwart his own, in triumph bore. Loud shouts ensue. The Latins turn their eyes, and view unusual sight with vast surprise. The fiery Trojan, flying o'er the plains, pressed in his arms the ponderous prey sustains. Then, with his shortened spear, explores around his jointed arms, to fix a deadly wound. Nor less the captive struggles for his life. He writhes his body to prolong the strife, and fencing for his naked throat, exerts his utmost vigor, and the point averts. So stoops the yellow eagle from on high, and bears a speckled serpent thro' the sky, fastening his crooked talons on the prey. The prisoner hisses thro' the liquid way, resists the royal hawk. And though oppressed, she fights in volumes, and erects her crest and turn to her foe. She stiffens every scale, and shoots her forky tongue, and whisks her threatening tail. Against the victor, all defense is weak. Imperial bird still plies her with his beak. He tears her bowels, and her breast he gores, then claps his pinions, and securely soars. Thus, thro' the midst of circling enemies, strong Trojan snatched and bore away his prize. The Tyrrhene troops that shrunk before now press the Latins, and presume the like success. Then Aruns, doomed to death, his arts essayed to murder unespied the Volscian maid. This way and that his winding course he bends, and wheresoe'er she turns her steps attends. When she retires victorious from the chase, he wheels about with care and shifts his place. When, rushing on, she seeks her foes in fight, he keeps aloof, but keeps her still in sight. He threats and trembles, trying every way, unseen to kill and safely to betray. Chlorius, the priest of Cybele, from far, glittering in Phrygian arms amidst the war, was by the virgin viewed. The steed he pressed was proud with trappings, and his brawny chest with scales of gilded brass was covered o'er. A robe of Tyrian dye the rider wore. With deadly wounds he galled the distant foe, Noscian his shafts, and Lycian was his bow. A golden helm his front and head surrounds, a gilded quiver from his shoulder sounds. Gold, weaved with linen, on his thighs he wore, with flowers of needlework distinguished o'er, with golden buckles bound, and gathered up before. Him the fierce maid beheld with ardent eyes, fond and ambitious of so rich a prize, or that the temple might his trophies hold, or else to shine herself in Trojan gold. Blind in her haste, she chases him alone, and seeks his life, regardless of her own. This lucky moment the sly traitor chose. Then, starting from his ambush, up he rose and threw, but first to heaven addressed his vows. O patron of Socrates' high abodes, Phobus, the ruling power among the gods, whom first we serve, whole woods of unctuous pine are felled for thee, and to thy glory shine by thee protected with our naked souls throw flames unsinged we march, and tread the kindled coals. Give me propitious power to wash away the stains of this dishonorable day. Nor spoils nor triumph from the fact I claim, but with my future actions trust my fame. Let me, by stealth, this female plague o'ercome, and from the field return inglorious home. Apollo heard, and granting half his prayer, shuffled in winds the rest, and tossed in empty air, he gives the death desired. His safe return by southern tempests to the seas is borne. Now, when the javelin whizzed along the skies, both armies on Camilla turned their eyes, directed by the sound. Of either host, unhappy virgin, though concerned the most, was only deaf. So greedy was she bent on golden spoils, and on her prey intent, till in her pap the winged weapon stood infixed and deeply drunk the purple blood. Her sad attendants hastened to sustain their dying lady, drooping on the plain. Far from their sight the trembling Aruns flies with beating heart and fear confuzzed with joys, nor dares he farther to pursue his blow, or even to bear the sight of his expiring foe, as, when the wolf has torn a bullock's hide at unawares, or ranched a shepherd's side, conscious of his audacious deed, he flies, and claps his quivering tail between his thighs, so, speeding once, the wretch no more attends, but spurring forward herds among his friends. She wrenched the javelin with her dying hands, but wedged within her breast the weapon stands. The wood she draws, the steely point remains. She staggers in her seat with agonizing pains. A gathering mist o'erclouds her cheerful eyes, and from her cheeks the rosy color flies. Then turns to her, whom of her female train she trusted most, and thus she speaks with pain. Acca, 'tis past. He swims before my sight inexorable death, and claims his right. Bear my last words to Turnus. Fly with speed, and bid him timely to my charge succeed, repel the Trojans, and the town relieve. Farewell. And in this kiss my parting breath receive. She said, and sliding, sunk upon the plain, dying, her opened hand forsakes the rein short, and more short she pants. By slow degrees her mind the passage from her body frees. She drops her sword. She nods her plumy crest, her drooping head declining on her breast. In the last sigh her struggling soul expires, and murmuring with disdain to Stygian sounds retires. A shout that struck the golden stars ensued. Despair and rage the languished fight renewed. The Trojan troops and Tuscans in a line advance to charge. The mixed Arcadians join. But Cynthia's maid, high-seated from afar, surveys the field and fortune of the war. Unmoved awhile, till, prostrate on the plain, weltering in blood, she sees Camilla slain, and round her corpse of friends and foes a fighting train. Then from the bottom of her breast she drew a mournful sigh, and these sad words ensue. Too dear a fine, much lamented maid, for warring with the Trojans thou hast paid, nor aught availed in this unhappy strife, Diana's sacred arms to save thy life. Yet unrevenged thy goddess will not leave her Vatry's death, nor, with vain sorrow grieve, branded the wretch and be his name abhorred. But after ages shall thy praise record, inglorious cowards soon shall press the plain, thus vows thy queen, and thus the fates ordain. High o'er the field there stood a hilly mound, sacred the place, and spread with oaks around, where in a marble tomb Dercennus lay, a king that once in Latium bore the sway. The beauteous Opis thither bent her flight, to mark the traitor Aruns from the height. Him in refulgent arms she soon espied, swoln with success. And loudly thus she cried, thy backward steps, vain boaster, are too late. Turn like a man at length and meet thy fate. Charged with my message, to Camilla go, and say I sent thee to the shades below, an honor undeserved from Cynthia's bow. She said, and from her quiver chose with speed the winged shaft, predestined for the deed. Then to the stubborn yew her strength applied, till the far distant horns approached on either side. The bowstring touched her breast, so strong she drew, whizzing in air the fatal arrow flew. At once the twanging bow and sounding dart the traitor heard, and felt the point within his heart. Him, beating with his heels in pangs of death, his flying friends to foreign fields bequeath. The conquering damsel, with expanded wings, the welcome message to her mistress brings. Their leader lost, the Volscians quit the field, and unsustained the chiefs of Turnus yield. The frighted soldiers, when their captains fly, more on their speed than on their strength rely. Confuzzed in flight, they bear each other down, and spur their horses headlong to the town. Driven by their foes, and to their fears resigned, not once they turn, but take their wounds behind. These drop the shield, and those the lance forgo, or on their shoulders bear the slackened bow. The hoofs of horses, with a rattling sound, beat short and thick, and shake the rotten ground. Black clouds of dust come rolling in the sky, and o'er the darkened walls and rampiers fly. The trembling matrons from their lofty stands rend heaved with female shrieks and wring their hands. All pressing on, pursuers and pursued, are crushed in crowds, a mingled multitude. Some happy few escape. The throng too late rush on for entrance till they choke the gate. E'en in the sight of home, the wretched sire looks on and sees his helpless son expire. Then in affright the folding gates they close, but leave their friends excluded with their foes. The vanquished cry, the victors loudly shout, tease terror all within and slaughter all without. Blind in their fear, they bounce against the wall, or to the moats pursued, precipitate their fall. The Latian virgins, valiant with despair, armed on the tors, the common danger share. So much of zeal their country's cause inspired, so much Camilla's great example furred. Poles, sharpened in the flames, from high they throw with imitated darts to gall the foe. Their lives for godlike freedom they bequeath, and crowd each other to be first in death. Meantime to Turnus, ambushed in the shade, with heavy tidings came unhappy maid. The Volscians overthrown, Camilla killed, the foes entirely masters of the field, like a resistless flood come rolling on. The cry goes off the plain and thickens to the town. Inflamed with rage, for so the Furies fire the Daunian's breast, and so the fates require, he leaves the hilly pass, the woods in vain possessed, and downward issues on the plain. Scarce was he gone, when to the straits, now freed from secret foes, the Trojan troops succeed, throw the black forest and the ferny brake. Unknowingly secure, their way they take, from the rough mountains to the plain descend, and there in order drawn their line extend. Both armies now in open fields are seen, nor far the distance of the space between. Both to the city bend. Aeneas sees through smoking fields his hastening enemies, and Turnus views the Trojans in array, and hears approaching horses proudly neigh. Soon had their hosts in bloody battle joined, but westward to the sea the sun declined. Entrenched before the town both armies lie, while night with sable wings involves the sky. Book 12. The Argument. Turnus challenges Aeneas to a single combat. Articles are agreed on but broken by the Rutuli, who wound Aeneas. He is miraculously cured by Venus, forces Turnus to a duel, and concludes the poem with his death. When Turnus saw the Latins leave the field, their armies broken and their courage quelled, himself become the mark of public spite, his honor questioned for the promised fight. The more he was with vulgar hate oppressed, the more his fury boiled within his breast. He roused his vigor for the last debate, and raised his haughty soul to meet his fate. As when the swains the Libyan lion chase, he makes a sour retreat, nor mends his pace. But if the pointed javelin pierce his side, the lordly beast returns with double pride. He wrenches out the steel, he roars for pain, his sides he lashes and erects his mane. So Turnus fares. His eyeballs flash with fire throw, his wide nostrils clouds of smoke expire. Trembling with rage, around the court he ran, at length approached the king and thus began. No more excuses or delays. I stand in arms prepared to combat hand to hand this base deserter of his native land. The Trojan, by his word, is bound to take the same conditions which himself did make. Renew the truce, the solemn rites prepare, and to my single virtue trust the war. The Latians unconcerned shall see the fight. This arm unaided shall assert your right. Then, if my prostrate body press the plain, to him the crown and beauteous bride remain. To whom the king sedately thus replied, Brave youth, the more your valor has been tried, the more becomes it us, with due respect, to weigh the chance of war which you neglect. You want not wealth or a successive throne, or cities which your arms have made your own. My towns and treasures are at your command, and stored with blooming beauties is my land. Laurentum more than one Lavinia sees, unmarried, fair, of noble families. Now let me speak, and you with patience hear things which perhaps may grate a lover's ear, but sound advice, proceeding from a heart sincerely yours and free from fraudful art. The gods by signs have manifestly shown, no prince Italian born should heir my throne. Oft have our augurs in prediction skilled, and oft our priests a foreign son revealed. Yet one by worth that cannot be withstood, bribbed by my kindness to my kindred blood, urged by my wife, who would not be denied. I promised my Lavinia for your bride. Her from her plighted lord by force I took, all ties of treaties and of honor broke. On your account I wagged an impious war. With what success? 'Tis needless to declare, I and my subjects feel, and you have had your share. Twice vanquished while in bloody fields we strive, scarce in our walls we keep our hopes alive. The rolling flood runs warm with human gore, the bones of Latians blanch the neighboring shore. Why put I not an end to this debate, still unresolved and still a slave to fate? If Turnus, death a lasting peace can give, why should I not procure it whilst you live? Should I to doubtful arms your youth betray, what would my kinsmen, the Rutulians, say? And should you fall in fight, which heathen defend? How curse the cause which hastened to his end, the daughter's lover and the father's friend? Weigh in your mind the various chance of war, pity your parent's age, and ease his care. Such balmy words he poured, but all in vain. The proffered medicine but provoked the pain. The wrathful youth, disdaining the relief, with intermitting sobs thus vents his grief. The care, O best of fathers, which you take for my concerns, at my desire forsake. Permit me not to languish out my days, but make the best exchange of life for praise. This arm, this lance, can well dispute the prize, and the blood follows where the weapon flies. His goddess mother is not near, to shroud the flying coward with an empty cloud. But now the queen, who feared for Turnus' life, and loathed the hard conditions of the strife, held him by force, and dying in his death in these sad accents gave her sorrow breath. O Turnus, I adjure thee by these tears, and whate'er price Amata's honor bears within thy breast, since thou art all my hope, my sickly mind's repose, my sinking age's prop, since on the safety of thy life alone depends Latinus and the Latian throne, refuse me not this one, this only prayer, to waive the combat and pursue the war. Whatever chance attends this fatal strife, think it includes in thine, Amata's life. I cannot live a slave, or see my throne usurped by strangers or a Trojan son. At this a flood of tears Lavinia shed, a crimson blush her beauteous face o'erspread, varying her cheeks by turns with white and red. The driving colors, never at a stay, run here and there, and flush and fade away. Delightful change. Thus Indian ivory shows, which with the bordering paint of purple glows, or lilies damasked by the neighboring rose. The lover gazed, and burning with desire, the more he looked, the more he fed the fire. Revenge and jealous rage and secret spite roll in his breast and rouse him to the fight. Then fixing on the queen his ardent eyes, firm to his first intent, he thus replies, O mother, do not by your tears prepare such boding omens and prejudge the war. Resolved on fight, I am no longer free to shun my death, if heaven my death decree. Then turning to the herald thus pursues, Go, greet the Trojan with ungrateful news, denounce from me that, when tomorrow's light shall gild the heavens, he need not urge the fight. The Trojan and Rutulian troops no more shall die, with mutual blood the Latian shore. Our single swords the quarrel shall decide, and to the victor be the beauteous bride. He said, and striding on with speedy pace, he sought his coursers of the Thracian race. At his approach they tossed their heads on high, and proudly neighing promised victory. The sires of these Orythia sent from far to grace Pilumnus when he went to war. The drifts of Thracian snows were scarce so white, nor northern winds in fleetness matched their flight. Officious grooms stand ready by his side, and some with combs their flowing manes divide, and others stroke their chests and gently soothe their pride. He sheathed his limbs in arms, a tempered mass of golden metal those and mountain brass. Then to his head his glittering helm he tied, and girt his faithful falchion to his side. In his Aenean forge, the god of fire that falchion labored for the hero's sire, immortal keenness on the blade bestowed, and plunged it hissing in the Stygian flood. Propped on a pillar which the ceiling bore was plaqued the lance Orincan actor wore, which with such force he brandished in his hand. The tough ash trembled like an osier wand, then cried, O ponderous spoil of actor slain, and never yet by Turnus tossed in vain, fail not this day thy wonted force, but go, sent by this hand, to pierce the Trojan foe. Give me to tear his corslet from his breast, and from that eunuch head to rend the crest, dragged in the dust, his frizzled hair to soil, hot from the vexing urn and smeared with fragrant oil. Thus while he raves, from his wide nostrils flies a fiery steam and sparkles from his eyes. So fares the bull in his loved female's sight. Proudly he bellows and preludes the fight. He tries his goring horns against a tree and meditates his absent enemy. He pushes at the winds. He digs the strand with his black hoofs and spurns the yellow sand. Nor less the Trojan in his Lemnian arms to future fight his manly courage warms. He whets his fury, and with joy prepares to terminate at once the lingering wars, to cheer his chiefs and tender son, relates what heaven had promised, and expounds the fates. Then to the Latian king he sends, to cease the rage of arms and ratify the peace. The morn ensuing from the mountain's height had scarcely spread the skies with rosy light. Ethereal coursers bounding from the sea from out their flaming nostrils breathed the day, when now the Trojan and Rutulian guard in friendly labor joined the list prepared. Beneath the walls they measure out the space, then sacred altars rear on sods of grass, where with religious rites their common gods they place. In purest white the priests their heads attire, and living waters bear, and holy fire, and, o'er their linen hoods and shaded hair, long twisted wreaths of sacred vervain wear. In order issuing from the town appears the Latin legion, armed with pointed spears, and from the fields advancing on a line the Trojan and the Tuscan forces join. Their various arms afford a pleasing sight. A peaceful train they seem, in peace prepared for fight. Betwixt the ranks the proud commanders ride, glittering with gold and vests in purple dyed. Here Mnestheus, author of the Memmian line, and their Messapus, born of seed divine. Sign is given, and round the listed space each man in order fills his proper place. Reclining on their ample shields they stand, and fix their pointed lances in the sand. Now, studious of the sight, a numerous throng of either sex promiscuous, old and young, swarm the town. By those who rest behind the gates and walls and houses, tops are linned. Meantime the queen of heaven beheld the sight, with eyes unpleased from Mount Albano's height, since called Albano by succeeding fame, but then an empty hill without a name. She then surveyed the field, the Trojan powers, the Latian squadrons and Laurentine towers. Then thus the goddess of the skies bespoke, with sighs and tears, the goddess of the lake, King Turnus' sister, once a lovely maid, heir to the lust of lawless Jove betrayed, compressed by force but by the grateful god now made the nyes of the neighboring flood. O nymph, the pride of living lakes, said she, O most renowned and most beloved by me, long hast thou known, nor need I to record, the wanton sallies of my wandering lord. Of every Latian fair whom Jove misled to mount by stealth my violated bed, to thee alone I grudged not his embrace, but gave a part of heaven and an unenvied place. Now learn from me thy near-approaching grief, nor think my wishes want to thy relief. While fortune favored, nor heaven's king denied to lend my succor to the Latian side, I salved thy brother and the sinking state. But now he struggles with unequal fate, and goes, with gods averse, o'ermatched in might, to meet inevitable death in fight. Nor must I break the truce, nor can sustain the sight. Thou, if thou darst thy present aid supply, it well becomes a sister's care to try. At this the lovely nymph, with grief oppressed, thrice tore her hair and beat her comely breast, to whom Saturnia thus, Thy tears are late, haste, snatch him if he can be snatched from fate. New tumults kindle, violate the truce, who knows what changeful fortune may produce. 'Tis not a crime attempt what I decree, or if it were, discharge the crime on me. She said, and sailing on the winged wind, left the sad nymph suspended in her mind. And now in pomp the peaceful kings appear. 4 steeds the chariot of Latinus bear, 12 golden beams around his temples play, to mark his lineage from the god of day. 2 snowy coursers Turnus' chariot yoke, and in his hand 2 massy spears he shook. Then issued from the camp in arms divine Aeneas, author of the Roman line, and by his side Ascanius took his place, the second hope of Rome's immortal race. Adorned in white, a reverend priest appears, and offerings to the flaming altars bears, a porket, and a lamb that never suffered shears. Then to the rising sun he turns his eyes and strews the beasts, designed for sacrifice with salt and meal, With like officious care he marks their foreheads and he clips their hair. Betwixt their horns the purple wine he sheds, with the same generous juice the flame he feeds. Aeneas then unsheathed his shining sword, and thus with pious prayers the gods adored. All-seeing sun, and thou, Ausonian soil, for which I have sustained so long a toil, thou, king of heaven, and thou, the queen of air, propitious now and reconciled by prayer. Thou, god of war, whose unresisted sway the labors and events of arms obey, ye living fountains, and ye running floods, all powers of ocean, all ethereal gods hear and bear record. If I fall in field, or recreant in the fight to Turnus yield, my Trojans shall increase Evander's town. Ascanius shall renounce Ausonian crown. All claims, all questions of debate shall cease, nor he nor they with force infringe the peace. But if my juster arms prevail in fight, as sure they shall if I divine aright, my Trojans shall not o'er Italians reign, both equal, both unconquered shall remain, joined in their laws, their lands, and their abodes. I ask but altars for my weary gods. The care of those religious rites be mine, the crown to King Latinus I resign, his be the sovereign sway. Nor will I share his power in peace, or his command in war. For me, my friends another town shall frame, and bless the rising towers with fair Lavinia's name. Thus he, then with erected eyes and hands, the Latian king before his altar stands. By the same heaven, said he, and earth and main, and all the powers that all the three contain, by hell below, and by that upper God whose thunder signs the peace, who seals it with his nod, so let Latona's double offspring hear, and double-fronted Janus, what I swear. I touch the sacred altars, touch the flames, and all those powers attest, and all their names. Whatever chance befall on either side, no term of time this union shall divide. No force, no fortune shall my vows unbind, or shake the steadfast tenor of my mind, not though the circling seas should break their bound, o'erflow the shores, or sap the solid ground, not though the lamps of heaven their spheres forsake, hurled down and hissing in the nether lake, even as this royal scepter, for he bore a scepter in his hand, shall never more shoot out in branches or renew the birth. An orphan now, cut from the mother earth by the keen axe, dishonored of its hair, and cast in brass for Latian kings to bear. When thus in public view the peace was tied with solemn vows and sworn on either side, all dues performed which holy rites require, the victim beasts are slain before the fire, the trembling entrails from their bodies torn, and to the fattened flames in chargers borne. Already the Rutulians deem their man o'ermatched in arms, before the fight began. First rising fears are whispered thro' the crowd, then, gathering sound, they murmur more aloud. Now, side to side, they measure with their eyes the champion's bulk, their sinews, and their size. The nearer they approach, the more is known apparent disadvantage of their own. Turnus himself appears in public sight conscious of fate, desponding of the fight. Slowly he moves, and at his altar stands with eyes dejected, and with trembling hands, and, while he mutters undistinguished prayers, a livid deadness in his cheeks appears. With anxious pleasure when Juno viewed increasing fright of the mad multitude, when their short sighs and thickening sobs she heard, and found their ready minds for change prepared, dissembling her immortal form, she took Camertus, mean his habit and his look, a chief of ancient blood. In arms well known was his great sire, and he his greater son. His shape assumed, amid the ranks she ran, and humoring their first motions, thus began. For shame, Rutulians, can you bear the sight of one exposed for all in single fight? Can we, before the face of heaven, confess our courage colder or our numbers less? View all the Trojan host, Arcadian band, and Tuscan army, count them as they stand. Undaunted to the battle if we go, scarce every second man will share a foe. Turnus, 'tis true, in this unequal strife shall lose with honor his devoted life, or change it rather for immortal fame, succeeding to the gods from whence he came. But you, a servile and inglorious band, for foreign lords shall sow your native land, those fruitful fields your fighting fathers gained, which have so long their lazy sons sustained. With words like these, she carried her design, A rising murmur runs along the line. Then even the city troops, and Latians, turred with tedious war, seem with new souls inspired. Their champion's fate with pity they lament, and of the league so lately sworn repent. Nor fails the goddess to foment the rage with lying wonders, and a false presage, but adds a sign which, present to their eyes, inspires new courage and a glad surprise. For sudden in the fiery tracks above appears in pomp imperial bird of Jove, a plump of fowl he spies that swim the lakes, and o'er their heads his sounding pinions shakes. Then, stooping on the fairest of the train in his strong talons trust a silver swan. Italians wonder at unusual sight, but while he lags and labors in his flight, behold the dastard fowl return anew, and with united force the foe pursue. Clamorous around the royal hawk they fly, and thickening in a cloud o'ershade the sky. They cuff, they scratch, they cross his airy course, nor can encumbered bird sustain their force, but vexed, not vanquished, drops the ponderous prey, and lightened of his burthen, wings his way. Ausonian bands with shouts salute the sight, eager of action, and demand the fight. Then King Tolumnius, versed in augur's arts, cries out, and thus his boasted skill imparts. At length 'tis granted, what I long desired, this is what my frequent vows required. Ye gods, I take your omen and obey. Advance, my friends, and charge, I lead the way. These are the foreign foes whose impious band, like that rapacious bird, infest our land. But soon, like him, they shall be forked to see by strength united and forego the prey. Your timely succor to your country bring, haste to the rescue and redeem your king. He said, and pressing onward throw the crew, pawed in his lifted arm, his lance he threw. The winged weapon, whistling in the wind, came driving on, nor missed the mark designed. At once the cornel rattled in the skies, at once tumultuous shouts and clamors rise. 9 brothers in a goodly band there stood, born of Arcadian mixed with Tuscan blood, Gylippus' sons. The fatal javelin flew, aimed at the midmost of the friendly crew. A passage through the jointed arms it found, just where the belt was to the body bound, and struck the gentle youth extended on the ground. Then, furred with pious rage, the generous train run madly forward to revenge the slain, and some with eager haste their javelins throw, and some with sword in hand assault the foe. The wished insult the Latin troops embrace, and meet their ardor in the middle space. The Trojans, Tuscans, and Arcadian line, with equal courage obviate their design. Peace leaves the violated fields, and hate both armies urges to their mutual fate. With impious haste their altars are o'erturned, the sacrifice half broiled and half unburned. Thick storms of steel from either army fly, and clouds of clashing darts obscure the sky. Brands from the fire are missive weapons made, with chargers, bowls, and all the priestly trade. Latinus, frighted, hastens from the fray, and bears his unregarded gods away. These on their horses vault. Those yoke the car, the rest, with swords on high, run headlong to the war. Messapus, eager to confound the peace, spurred his hot courser thro' the fighting press. At King Aulus, by his purple known a Tuscan prince, and by his regal crown, and with a shock encountering bore him down, backward he fell. And as his fate designed, the ruins of an altar were behind. There, pitching on his shoulders and his head, amid the scattering fires he lay supinely spread. The beamy spear, descending from above, his cuirass pierced and thro' his body drove. Then with a scornful smile the victor cries, the gods have found a fitter sacrifice. Greedy of spoils, Italians strip the dead of his rich armor and uncrown his head. Priest Corinius armed his better hand from his own altar with a blazing brand, and, as Ebusus with a thundering pace advanced to battle, dashed it on his face. His bristly beard shines out with sudden fires, the crackling crop a noisome scent expires. Following the blow, he seized his curling crown with his left hand. His other cast him down. The prostrate body with his knees he pressed, and plunged his holy poniard in his breast. While Podalirius with his sword pursued the shepherd Alsus thro' the flying crowd, swiftly he turns, and aims a deadly blow full on the front of his unwary foe. The broad axe enters with a crashing sound, and cleaves the chin with one continued wound. Warm blood and mingled brains besmear his arms around an iron sleep his stupid eyes oppressed, and sealed their heavy lids in endless rest. But good Aeneas rushed amid the bands, bare was his head and naked were his hands in sign of truce. Then thus he cries aloud, "What sudden rage, what new desire of blood inflames your altered minds? O Trojans, cease from impious arms, nor violate the peace. By human sanctions and by laws divine, the terms are all agreed, the war is mine. Dismiss your fears, and let the fight ensue. This hand alone shall right the gods and you, our injured altars, and their broken vow to this avenging sword the faithless Turnus owe." Thus while he spoke, unmindful of defense, a winged arrow struck the pious prince. But whether from some human hand it came, or hostile god, is left unknown by fame. No human hand or hostile god was found to boast the triumph of so base a wound. When Turnus saw the Trojan quit the plain, his chiefs dismayed, his troops a fainting train unhopped of and his heightened soul inspires. At once his arms and coursers he requires, then with a leap his lofty chariot gains, and with a ready hand assumes the reins. He drives impetuous, and where'er he goes, he leaves behind a lane of slaughtered foes. These his lance reaches. Over those he rolls his rapid car and crushes out their souls. In vain the vanquished fly. The victor sends the dead men's weapons at their living friends. Thus, on the banks of Hebrus, freezing flood, the god of battles in his angry mood, clashing his sword against his brazen shield, let loose the reins and scours along the field. Before the wind his fiery coursers fly, groans the sad earth, resounds the rattling sky. Wrath, terror, treason, tumult, and despair, dire faces and deformed, surround the car friends of the god and followers of the war. With fury not unlike, nor less disdain, exulting Turnus flies along the plain. His smoking horses at their utmost speed he lashes on and urges o'er the dead. Their fetlocks run with blood, and when they bound, the gore and gathering dust are dashed around. Thamyris and Pholus, masters of the war, he killed at hand, but Esthenelus afar. From far the sons of Imbracus he slew Glaucus and Lades, of the Lycian crew, both taught to fight on foot, in battle joined, or mount the courser that outstrips the wind. Meantime Eumedes, vaunting in the field, new-furred the Trojans and their foes repelled. This son of Dolon bore his grandsire's name, but emulated more his father's fame. His guileful father sent a nightly spy, the Grecian camp in order to descry hard enterprise. And well he might require Achilles, car and horses for his hire, but met upon the scout, Aetolian prince in death bestowed a juster recompense. Fierce Turnus viewed the Trojan from afar, and launched his javelin from his lofty car, then lightly leaping down, pursued the blow, and pressing with his foot his prostrate foe, wrenched from his feeble hold the shining sword and plunged it in the bosom of its lord. "Possess," said he, "the fruit of all thy pains, and measure at thy length our Latian plains. Thus are my foes rewarded by my hand, thus may they build their town, and thus enjoy the land." Then dares, buttes, Sybaris he slew, whom o'er his neck his floundering courser threw, as when loud Boreas with his blustering train stoops from above, incumbent on the main, where'er he flies, he drives the rack before and rolls the billows on Aegean shore, so, where resistless Turnus takes his course, the scattered squadrons bend before his force. His crest of horses, hair is blown behind by adverse air, and rustles in the wind. This haughty Phegeus saw with high disdain, and as the chariot rolled along the plain light from the ground he leapt, and seized the rein. Thus hung in air, he still retained his hold, the coursers frighted and their course controlled. The lance of Turnus reached him as he hung, and pierced his plated arms, but passed along and only razed the skin. He turned and held against his threatening foe his ample shield, then called for aid, but while he cried in vain, the chariot bore him backward on the plain. He lies reversed, the victor king descends, and strikes so justly where his helmet ends, he lops the head. The Latian fields are drunk with streams that issue from the bleeding trunk. While he triumphs and while the Trojans yield, The wounded prince is forced to leave the field, strong Mnestheus and Achates often tried, and young Ascanius, weeping by his side, conduct him to his tent. Scarce can he rear his limbs from earth, supported on his spear. Resolved in mind, regardless of the smart, he tugs with both his hands and breaks the dart. The steel remains. No readier way he found to draw the weapon than enlarge the wound. Eager of fight, impatient of delay, he begs, and his unwilling friends obey. Aeneas was at hand to prove his art, whose blooming youth so furred Apollo's heart, that for his love he proffered to bestow his tuneful harp and his unerring bow. The pious youth, more studious how to save his aged sire, now sinking to the grave, preferred the power of plants and silent praise of healing arts before Phoebine bays. Propped on his lance the pensive hero stood, and heard and saw unmoved the mourning crowd. The famed physician tucks his robes around with ready hands, and hastens to the wound. With gentle touches he performs his part this way and that, soliciting the dart, and exercises all his heavenly art, all softening simples known of sovereign use. He presses out and pours their noble juice. These first in fust, to lenify the pain, he tugs with pincers, but he tugs in vain. Then to the patron of his art he prayed. The patron of his art refused his aid. Meantime the war approaches to the tents. Alarm grows hotter and the noise augments. The driving dust proclaims the danger near, and first their friends and then their foes appear. Their friends retreat. Their foes pursue the rear. The camp is filled with terror and affright. The hissing shafts within the trench alight. An undistinguished noise ascends the sky, the shouts of those who kill and groans of those who die. But now the goddess mother, with grief and pierced with pity, hastens her relief. A branch of healing dittany she brought, which in the Cretan fields with care she sought. Rough is the stem, which woolly leaves surround, the leaves with flowers, the flowers with purple crowned. Well known to wounded goats, a sure relief to draw the pointed steel and ease the grief. This Venus brings, in clouds involved and bruised extracted liquor with ambrosian dews, an odorous panacea. Unseen she stands, tempering the mixture with her heavenly hands, and pours it in a bowl, already crowned with juice of medicinal herbs prepared to bathe the wound. The leech, unknowing of superior art which aids the cure, with this foments the part, and in a moment sees the raging smart. Stanched is the blood, and in the bottom stands the steel, but scarcely touched with tender hands, moves up and follows of its own accord, and health and vigor are at once restored. Aeneas first perceived the closing wound, and first the footsteps of a god he found. Arms, arms, he cries, the sword and shield prepare, and send the willing chief renewed to war. This is no mortal work, no cure of mine nor art's effect, but done by hands divine. Some god our general to the battle sends, some god preserves his life for greater ends. The hero arms in haste. His hands enfold his thighs with cuishes of refulgent gold. Inflamed to fight and rushing to the field, that hand sustaining the celestial shield, this gripes the lance and with such vigor shakes, that to the rest the beamy weapon quakes. Then with a close embrace he strained his son, and kissing thro' his helmet thus begun. My son, from my example learn the war, in camps to suffer and in fields to dare, but happier chance than mine attend thy care. This day my hand thy tender age shall shield, and crown with honors of the conquered field. Thou, when thy riper years shall send thee forth to toils of war, be mindful of my worth, assert thy birthright, and in arms be known for Hector's nephew and Aeneas' son. He said, and striding issued on the plain. Aeneas and Mnestheus and a numerous train attend his steps, the rest their weapons take, and crowding to the field the camp forsake. A cloud of blinding dust is raised around, labors beneath their feet the trembling ground. Now Turnus, posted on a hill, from far beheld the progress of the moving war. With him the Latins viewed the covered plains, and the chill blood ran backward in their veins. Juno saw advancing troops appear, and heard the hostile sound and fled for fear. Aeneas leads, and draws a sweeping train, closed in their ranks and pouring on the plain. As when a whirlwind, rushing to the shore from the mid-ocean, drives the waves before, the painful hind with heavy heart foresees the flatted fields and slaughter of the trees. With like impetuous rage the prince appears before his doubled front, nor less destruction bears. And now both armies shock in open field. Cyrus is by strong Thymbrius killed. Arcadius, Ufens, Epulon are slain, all famed in arms and of the Latian train, by Gyas, Mnestheus, and Acades' hand. The fatal augur falls, by whose command the truce was broken, and whose lance, imbrued with Trojan blood, unhappy fight renewed. Loud shouts and clamors rend the liquid sky, and o'er the field the frighted Latins fly. The prince disdains the dastards to pursue, nor moves to meet in arms the fighting few. Turnus alone, amid the dusky plain he seeks, and to the combat calls in vain. Juno heard, and, seized with mortal fear, forked from the beam her brother's charioteer, assumes his shape, his armor, and his mien, and like Mediscus in his seat is seen. As the black swallow near the palace plies, o'er empty courts and under arches flies, now hawks aloft, now skims along the flood to furnish her loquacious nest with food, so drives the rapid goddess o'er the plains. The smoking horses run with loosened reins. She steers a various course among the foes, now here, now there, her conquering brother shows, now with a straight, now with a wheeling flight she turns and bends, but shuns the single fight. Aeneas, furred with fury, breaks the crowd, and seeks his foe and calls by name aloud. He runs within a narrower ring and tries to stop the chariot, but the chariot flies. If he but gain a glimpse, Juno fears, and far away the Daunian hero bears. What should he do? Nor arts nor arms avail, and various cares in vain his mind assail. The great Messapus, thundering thro' the field, in his left hand 2 pointed javelins held. Encountering on the prince, 1 dart he drew, and with unerring aim and utmost vigor threw. Aeneas saw it come, and stooping low beneath his buckler, shunned the threatening blow. The weapon hissed above his head, and tore the waving plume which on his helm he wore. Forced by this hostile act and furred with spite, that flying Turnus still declined the fight. The prince, whose piety had long repelled his inborn ardor, now invades the field, invokes the powers of violated peace, their rights and injured altars to redress. Then, to his rage abandoning the rein, with blood and slaughtered bodies fills the plain. What God can tell, what numbers can display, the various labors of that fatal day, what chiefs and champions fell on either side in combat slain, or by what deaths they died, whom Turnus, whom the Trojan hero killed, who shared the fame and fortune of the field. Jove, couldst thou view, and not avert thy sight, 2 jarring nations joined in cruel fight, whom leagues of lasting love so shortly shall unite. Aeneas first Rutulian succor found, whose valor made the Trojans quit their ground. Betwixt his ribs the javelin drove so just, it reached his heart, nor needs a second thrust. Now Turnus at 2 blows 2 brethren slew. First from his horse fierce Amycus he threw, then, leaping on the ground, on foot assailed Diors, and in equal fight prevailed. Their lifeless trunks he leaves upon the place, their heads distilling gore, his chariot grace. 3 cold on earth the Trojan hero threw, whom without respite at 1 charge he slew. Cethegus, Tanais, Tagus fell oppressed, and sad Aeneas added to the rest of Theban blood whom Peridia bore. Turnus 2 brothers from the Lycian shore, and from Apollo's fane to battle sent, o'erthrew, nor Phoebus could their fate prevent. Peaceful Menoets after these he killed, who long had shunned the dangers of the field. On Lerna's lake a silent life he led, and with his nets and angle earned his bread. Nor pompous cares nor palaces he knew, but wisely from infectious world withdrew. Poor was his house, his father's painful hand discharged his rent, and plowed another's land. As flames among the lofty woods are thrown on different sides, and both by winds are blown, the laurels crackle in the sputtering fire, the frighted sylvans from their shades retire. Or as 2 neighboring torrents fall from high, rapid they run, the foamy waters fry, they roll to sea with unresisted force, and down the rocks precipitate their course. Not with less rage the rival heroes take their different ways, nor less destruction make. With spears afar, with swords at hand they strike, and zeal of slaughter fires their souls alike. Like them, their dauntless men maintain the field, and hearts are pierced, unknowing how to yield. They blow for blow return, and wound for wound, and heaps of bodies raise the level ground. Murranus, boasting of his blood that springs from a long royal race of Latian kings, is by the Trojan from his chariot thrown, crushed with the weight of an unwieldy stone. Betwixt the wheels he fell. The wheels that bore his living load his dying body tore. His starting steeds, to shun the glittering sword, paw down his trampled limbs, forgetful of their lord. Fierce Hyllus threatened high, and face to face affronted Turnus in the middle space. The prince encountered him in full career, and at his temples aimed the deadly spear. So fatally the flying weapon sped, that through his brazen helm it pierced his head. Nor, Cisseus, couldst thou scape from Turnus' hand. In vain the strongest of Arcadian band. Nor to Cupentus could his gods afford availing aid against Aenean sword, which to his naked heart pursued the course, nor could his plated shield sustain the force. Iolaus fell, whom not the Grecian powers nor great subverter of the Trojan towers were doomed to kill, while heaven prolonged his date. But who can pass the bounds prefixed by fate? In high Lionessus, and in Troy, he held 2 palaces and was from each expelled. Of all the mighty man, the last remains a little spot of foreign earth contains. And now both hosts their broken troops unite in equal ranks and mix in mortal fight. Cerysthus and undaunted Mnestheus join the Trojan, Tuscan, and Arcadian line. Sea-born Messapus with Atenas heads the Latin squadrons and to battle leads. They strike, they push, they throng the scanty space, resolved on death, impatient of disgrace, and where one falls, another fills his place. The Cyprian goddess now inspires her son to leave unfinished fight and storm the town, for, while he rolls his eyes around the plain in quest of Turnus, whom he seeks in vain, he views unguarded city from afar, in careless quiet and secure of war. Occasion offers, and excites his mind to dare beyond the task he first designed. Resolved, he calls his chiefs. They leave the fight. Attended thus, he takes a neighboring height. The crowding troops about their general stand, all under arms, and wait his high command. Then thus the lofty prince: "Hear and obey, ye Trojan bands, without the least delay. Jove is with us, and what I have decreed requires our utmost vigor and our speed. Your instant arms against the town prepare, the source of mischief and the seat of war. This day the Latian towers, that mate the sky, shall level with the plain in ashes lie. The people shall be slaves, unless in time they kneel for pardon and repent their crime. Twice have our foes been vanquished on the plain. Then shall I wait till Turnus will be slain. Your force against the perjured city bend. There it began, and there the war shall end. The peace profaned our rightful arms requires. Cleanse the polluted place with purging fires." He finished, and one soul inspiring all formed in a wedge. The foot approached the wall. Without the town, an unprovided train of gaping, gazing citizens are slain. Some firebrands, others scaling ladders bear, and those they toss aloft, and these they rear. The flames now launched, the feathered arrows fly, and clouds of missive arms obscure the sky. Advancing to the front, the hero stands, and stretching out to heaven his pious hands, attests the gods, asserts his innocence, upbraids with breach of faith Ausonian prince, declares the royal honor doubly stained, and twice the rights of holy peace profaned. Dissenting clamors in the town arise, each will be heard, and all at once advise. One part for peace, and one for war contends. Some would exclude their foes, and some admit their friends. The helpless king is hurried in the throng, and whate'er tide prevails is borne along. Thus when the swain within a hollow rock invades the bees with suffocating smoke, they run around or labor on their wings, disuse to flight, and shoot their sleepy stings. To shun the bitter fumes in vain they try. Black vapors, issuing from the vent, involve the sky. But fate and envious fortune now prepare to plunge the Latins in the last despair. The queen, who saw the foes invade the town, and brands on tops of burning houses thrown, cast round her eyes, distracted with her fear. No troops of Turnus in the field appear. Once more she stares abroad, but still in vain, and then concludes the royal youth is slain. Mad with her anguish, impotent to bear the mighty grief, she loathes the vital air. She calls herself the cause of all this ill, and owns the dire effects of her ungoverned will. She raves against the gods. She beats her breast. She tears with both her hands her purple vest. Then round a beam a running noose she tied, and fastened by the neck, obscenely died. Soon as the fatal news by fame was blown, and to her dames and to her daughter known, the sad Lavinia rends her yellow hair and rosy cheeks, the rest her sorrow share, with shrieks the palace rings and madness of despair. The spreading rumor fills the public place, confusion, fear, distraction, and disgrace, and silent shame are seen in every face. Latinus tears his garments as he goes, both for his public and his private woes, with filth his venerable beard besmears, and sordid dust deforms his silver hairs. And much he blames the softness of his mind, obnoxious to the charms of womankind, and soon seduct to change what he so well designed, to break the solemn league so long desired, nor finish what his fates and those of Troy required. Now Turnus rolls aloof o'er empty plains, and here and there some straggling foes he gleans. His flying coursers please him less and less, ashamed of easy fight and cheap success. Thus half contented, anxious in his mind, the distant cries come driving in the wind, shouts from the walls, but shouts in murmurs drowned, a jarring mixture and a boding sound. Alas, said he, what mean these dismal cries, what doleful clamors from the town arise? Confuzzed, he stops and backward pulls the reins. She who the driver's office now sustains replies, Neglect, my lord, these new alarms, here fight and urge the fortune of your arms. There want not others to defend the wall. If by your rival's hand Italians fall, so shall your fatal sword his friends oppress. In honor equal, equal in success. To this the prince, O sister, for I knew the peace in Fring proceeded first from you, I knew you when you mingled first in fight, and now in vain you would deceive my sight. Why, goddess, this unprofitable care? Who sent you down from heaven, involved in air, your share of mortal sorrows to sustain, and see your brother bleeding on the plain? For to what power can Turnus have recourse, or how resist his fate's prevailing force? These eyes beheld Murrinus bite the ground, mighty the man and mighty was the wound. I heard my dearest friend, with dying breath, my name invoking to revenge his death. Brave Ufens fell with honor on the place, to shun the shameful sight of my disgrace. On earth supine, a manly corpse he lies, his vest and armor are the victor's prize. Then shall I see Laurentum in a flame, which only wanted to complete my shame. How will the Latins hoot their champion's flight? How Drances will insult and point them to the sight? Is death so hard to bear? Ye gods below, since those above so small compassion show, receive a soul unsullied yet with shame, which not belies my great forefather's name. He said, and while he spoke with flying speed came sages urging on his foamy steed, fixed on his wounded face a shaft he bore, and seeking Turnus sent his voice before. Turnus, on you alone depends our last relief. Compassionate your friends, like lightning fierce Aeneas rolling on with arms in vests, with flames invades the town. The brands are tossed on high. The winds conspire to drive along the deluge of the fire. All eyes are fixed on you. Your foes rejoice. Even the king staggers and suspends his choice, doubts to deliver or defend the town, whom to reject or whom to call his son. The queen, on whom your utmost hopes were placked, herself suborning death has breathed her last. 'Tis true Messapus, fearless of his fate, with fierce Atena's aid defends the gate. On every side surrounded by the foe, the more they kill, the greater numbers grow. An iron harvest mounts and still remains to mow. You, far aloof from your forsaken bands, your rolling chariot drive o'er empty sands. Stupid he sate, his eyes on earth declined, and various cares revolving in his mind, rage boiling from the bottom of his breast, and sorrow mixed with shame, his soul oppressed, and conscious worth lay laboring in his thought, and love by jealousy to madness wrought. By slow degrees his reason drove away the mists of passion and resumed her sway. Then, rising on his car, he turned his look, and saw the town involved in fire and smoke. A wooden tower with flames already blazed, which his own hands on beams and rafters raised, and bridges laid above to join the space, and wheels below to roll from place to place. Sister, the fates have vanquished. Let us go the way which heaven and my hard fortune show. The fight is fixed, nor shall the branded name of a base coward blot your brother's fame. Death is my choice, but suffer me to try my force and vent my rage before I die." He said, and leaping down without delay through crowds of scattered foes he freed his way, striding he passed, impetuous as the wind, and left the grieving goddess far behind. As when a fragment from a mountain torn by raging tempests, or by torrents borne, or sapped by time, or loosened from the roots, prone thro' the void the rocky ruin shoots, rolling from crag to crag, from steep to steep, down sink at once the shepherds and their sheep. Involved alike they rush to nether ground, stunned with the shock they fall, and stunned from earth rebound. So Turnus, hasting headlong to the town, shuddering and shoving, bore the squadrons down. Still pressing onward to the walls he drew, where shafts and spears and darts promiscuous flew, and sanguine streams the slippery ground embrue. First stretching out his arm in sign of peace, he cries aloud to make the combat cease. "Rutulians, hold, and Latin troops, retire, the fight is mine, and me the gods require. 'Tis just that I should vindicate alone the broken truce, or for the breach atone. This day shall free from war's Ausonian state, or finish my misfortunes in my fate." Both armies from their bloody work desist, and bearing backward form a spacious list. The Trojan hero, who received from fame the welcome sound, and heard the champion's name, soon leaves the taken works and mounted walls, greedy of war where greater glory calls. He springs to fight, exulting in his force, his jointed armor rattles in the course. Like Eryx or like Athos great he shows, or Father Apennine when white with snows. His head divine obscure in clouds he hides, and shakes the sounding forest on his sides. The nations overawed surcease the fight, immovable their bodies fix their sight. Even death stands still, nor from above they throw their darts, nor drive their battering rams below. In silent order either army stands, and drop their swords unknowing from their hands. Ausonian king beholds, with wondering sight, two mighty champions matched in single fight, born under climes remote, and brought by fate, with swords to try their titles to the state. Now in closed field each other from afar they view, and rushing on begin the war. They launch their spears, then hand to hand they meet. The trembling soil resounds beneath their feet, their bucklers clash. Thick blows descend from high, and flakes of fire from their hard helmets fly. Courage conspires with chance, and both engage with equal fortune yet, and mutual rage. As when two bulls for their fair female fight in Scylla's shades, or on Tabernus' height, with horns adverse they meet. The keeper flies, mute stands the herd. The heifers roll their eyes and wait event. Which victor they shall bear, and who shall be the lord to rule the lusty year. With rage of love the jealous rivals burn, and push for push, and wound for wound return their dewlaps gored. Their sides are laved in blood, loud cries and roaring sounds rebellow thro' the wood. Such was the combat in the listed ground. So clash their swords, and so their shields resound. Jove sets the beam. In either scale he lays the champion's fate, and each exactly weighs. On this side life and lucky chance ascends, loaded with death. That other scale descends. Raised on the stretch, young Turnus aims a blow full on the helm of his unguarded foe. Shrill shouts and clamors ring on either side, as hopes and fears their panting hearts divide. But all in pieces flies the traitor's sword, and in the middle stroke deserts his lord. Now is but death or flight. Disarmed he flies, when in his hand an unknown hilt he spies. Fame says that Turnus, when his steeds he joined, hurrying to war, disordered in his mind, snatched the first weapon which his haste could find. 'Twas not the fated sword his father bore, but that his charioteer Mediscus wore. This, while the Trojans fled, the toughness held, but vain against the great Vulcanian shield. The mortal-tempered steel deceived his hand. The shivered fragments shone amid the sand. Suppressed with fear, he fled along the field, and now forthright, and now in orbits wheeled. For here the Trojan troops the list surround, and there the pass is closed with pools and marshy ground. Aeneas hastens, though with heavier pace. His wound, so newly knit, retards the chase, and oft his trembling knees their aid refuse. Yet pressing foot by foot, his foe pursues. Thus, when a fearful stag is closed around with crimson toils, or in a river found, high on the bank the deep-mouthed hound appears, still opening, following still, where'er he steers. The persecuted creature to and fro turns here and there to scape his Umbrian foe. Steep is ascent, and if he gains the land, the purple death is pitched along the strand. His eager foe, determined to the chase, stretched at his length, gains ground at every pace. Now to his beamy head he makes his way, and now he holds, or thinks he holds, his prey just at the pinch. The stag springs out with fear, he bites the wind and fills his sounding jaws with air. The rocks, the lakes, the meadows ring with cries, the mortal tumult mounts and thunders in the skies. Thus flies the Daunian prince, and flying blames his tardy troops, and calling by their names demands his trusty sword. The Trojan threats the realm with ruin, and their ancient seats to lay in ashes, if they dare supply with arms or aid his vanquished enemy. Thus menacing, he still pursues the course, with vigor though diminished of his force. 10 times already round the listed place one chief had fled, and other given the chase no trivial prize is played, for on the life or death of Turnus now depends the strife. Within the space an olive tree had stood, a sacred shade, a venerable wood for vows to Faunus paid, the Latins' guardian god. Here hung the vests, and tablets were engraved, of sinking mariners from shipwreck salved. With heedless hands the Trojans felled the tree, to make the ground enclosed for combat free. Deep in the root, whether by fate or chance, or erring haste, the Trojan drove his lance, then stooped, and tugged with force immense to free encumbered spear from the tenacious tree, that, whom his fainting limbs pursued in vain, his flying weapon might from far attain. Confuzzed with fear, bereft of human aid, then Turnus to the gods and first to Faunus prayed. O Faunus, pity, and thou Mother Earth, where I thy foster son received my birth, hold fast the steel. If my religious hand your plant has honored which your foes profaned, propitious hear my pious prayer, he said, nor with successless vows invoked their aid. Incumbent hero wrenched and pulled and strained, but still the stubborn earth the steel detained. Juno took her time, and while in vain he strove, assumed Medicus' form again, and in that imitated shape restored to the despairing prince his Daunian sword. The queen of love who, with disdain and grief, saw the bold nymph afford this prompt relief, assert her offspring with a greater deed, from the tough root the lingering weapon freed. Once more erect, the rival chiefs advance, one trusts the sword, and one the pointed lance, and both resolved alike to try their fatal chance. Meantime imperial Jove to Juno spoke, who from a shining cloud beheld the shock. What new arrest, O Queen of Heaven, is sent to stop the fates now laboring in event? What farther hopes are left thee to pursue, divine Aeneas? And thou know'st it too, fordom to these celestial seats are due. What more attempts for Turnus can be made, that thus thou lingerest in this lonely shade? Is it becoming of the due respect and awful honor of a god elect, a wound unworthy of our state to feel, patient of human hands and earthly steel? Or seems it just, the sister should restore a second sword, when one was lost before, and arm a conquered wretch against his conqueror? For what, without thy knowledge and avow, nay more, thy dictate, durst Juno do? At last, in deference to my love, forbear to lodge within thy soul this anxious care, reclined upon my breast, thy grief unload. Who should relieve the goddess but the god? Now all things to their utmost issue tend, pushed by the fates to their appointed end. While leave was given thee, and a lawful hour for vengeance, wrath, and unresisted power, tossed on the seas, thou couldst thy foes distress, and driven ashore with hostile arms oppressed to form the royal house, and from the side of the just bridegroom tear the plighted bride. Now cease at my command. The thunderess said, and with dejected eyes this answer Juno made. Because your dread decree too well I knew, from Turnus and from earth unwilling I withdrew. Else should you not behold me here, alone involved in empty clouds, my friends bemoan, but girt with vengeful flames, in open sight engagged against my foes in mortal fight. 'Tis true, Juno mingled in the strife by my command, to save her brother's life at least to try. But by the Stygian lake, the most religious oath the gods can take, with this restriction not to bend the bow, or toss the spear, or trembling dart to throw. And now, resigned to your superior might, and turred with fruitless toils, I loathe the fight. This let me beg, and this no fates withstand, both for myself and for your father's land, that, when the nuptial bed shall bind the peace, which I, since you ordain, consent to bless, the laws of either nation be the same. But let the Latins still retain their name, speak the same language which they spoke before, wear the same habits which their grandsires wore. Call them not Trojans, perish the renown and name of Troy with that detested town. Latium be Latium still. Let Alba reign and Rome's immortal majesty remain. Then thus the founder of mankind replies. Unruffled was his front, serene his eyes. Can Saturn's issue and heaven's other air such endless anger in her bosom bear? Be mistress and your full desires obtain, but quench the choler you foment in vain. From ancient blood Ausonian people sprung shall keep their name, their habit, and their tongue. The Trojans to their custom shall be tied. I will, myself, their common rights provide. The natives shall command, the foreigners subside. All shall be Latium, Troy without a name, and her lost sons forget from whence they came. From blood so mixed, a pious race shall flow, equal to gods, excelling all below. No nation more respect to you shall pay, or greater offerings on your altars lay. Juno consents, well pleased that her desires had found success, and from the cloud retires. The peace thus made, the Thundra next prepares to force the watery goddess from the wars. Deep in the dismal regions void of light, 3 daughters at a birth were born tonight. These their brown mother, brooding on her care, endued with windy wings to flit in air, with serpents girt alike, and crowned with hissing hair. In heaven the Duri called, and still at hand, before the throne of angry Jove they stand, his ministers of wrath, and ready still the minds of mortal men with fears to fill, whene'er the moody sire, to wreak his hate on realms or towns deserving of their fate, hurls down diseases, death, and deadly care, and terrifies the guilty world with war. One sister plague if these from heaven he sent, to fright Juno with a dire portent. The pest comes whirling down. By far more slow springs the swift arrow from the Parthian bow or Sidon yew, when traversing the skies, and drenched in poisonous juice, the sure destruction flies. With such a sudden and unseen a flight shot throw, the clouds the daughter of the night. Soon as the field enclosed she had in view, and from afar her destined quarry knew, contracted to the boding bird she turns, which haunts the ruined piles and hallowed urns, and beats about the tombs with nightly wings, where songs obscene on sepulchres she sings. Thus lessened in her form, with frightful cries the fury round unhappy Turnus flies, flaps on his shield, and flutters o'er his eyes. A lazy chillness crept along his blood, chocked was his voice. His hair with horror stood. Juno from afar beheld her fly, and knew ill omen, by her screaming cry and strider of her wings. Amazed with fear, her beauteous breast she beat and rent her flowing hair. "Ah me," she cries, "in this unequal strife what can thy sister more to save thy life? Weak as I am, can I, alas, contend in arms with that inexorable fiend? Now I quit the field. Forbear to fright my tender soul, ye baleful birds of night. The lashing of your wings I know too well, the sounding flight and funeral screams of hell. These are the gifts you bring from haughty Jove, the worthy recompense of ravished love. Did he for this exempt my life from fate? O hard conditions of immortal state, though born to death, not privileged to die, but forked to bear imposed eternity, take back your envious bribes, and let me go companion to my brother's ghost below. The joys are vanished. Nothing now remains of life immortal but immortal pains. What earth will open her devouring womb to rest a weary goddess in the tomb?" She drew a length of sighs, nor more she said, but in her azure mantle wrapped her head, then plunged into her stream with deep despair, and her last sobs came bubbling up in air. Now stern Aeneas waves his weighty spear against his foe, and thus upbraids his fear. What farther subterfuge can Turnus find? What empty hopes are harbored in his mind? Tease not thy swiftness can secure thy flight, not with their feet but hands the valiant fight. Vary thy shape in thousand forms, and dare what skill and courage can attempt in war. Wish for the wings of winds, to mount the sky, or hid, within the hollow earth to lie. The champion shook his head and made this short reply: No threats of thine my manly mind can move. Tease hostile heave I dread, and partial Jove. He said no more, but, with a sigh, repressed the mighty sorrow in his swelling breast. Then, as he rolled his troubled eyes around, an antique stone he saw, the common bound of neighboring fields and barrier of the ground, so vast that 12 strong men of modern days enormous weight from earth could hardly raise. He heaved it at a lift, and pawed on high ran staggering on against his enemy, but so disordered that he scarcely knew his way, or what unwieldy weight he threw. His knocking knees are bent beneath the load, and shivering cold congeals his vital blood. The stone drops from his arms, and, falling short for want of vigor, mocks his vain effort. And as, when heavy sleep has closed the sight, the sickly fancy labors in the night, we seem to run, and destitute of force, our sinking limbs forsake us in the course. In vain we heave for breath, in vain we cry, the nerves, unbracked, their usual strength deny, and on the tongue the faltering accents die. So Turnus fared. Whatever means he tried, all force of arms and points of art employed, the fury flew athwart and made endeavor void. 1,000 various thoughts his soul confound, he starred about, nor aid nor issue found. His own men stop the pass, and his own walls surround. Once more he pauses and looks out again, and seeks the goddess charioteer in vain. Trembling he views the thundering chief advance, and brandishing aloft the deadly lance. Amazed he cowers beneath his conquering foe, forgets to ward, and waits the coming blow. Astonished while he stands, and fixed with fear, aimed at his shield he sees impending spear. The hero measured first with narrow view the destined mark, and rising as he threw, with its full swing the fatal weapon flew. Not with less rage the rattling thunder falls, or stones from battering engines break the walls. Swift as a whirlwind from an arm so strong, the lance drove on and bore the death along. Naught could his sevenfold shield the prince avail, nor aught beneath his arms the coat of mail. It pierced through all, and with a grisly wound transfixed his thigh and doubled him to ground. With groans the Latins rend the vaulted sky, woods, hills, and valleys to the voice reply. Now low on earth the lofty chief is laid, with eyes cast upward and with arms displayed, and recreant thus to the proud victor prayed: I know my death deserved, nor hope to live. Use what the gods and thy good fortune give. Yet think, O think, if mercy may be shown, thou hadst a father once and hast a son. Pity my sire now sinking to the grave, and for Anchises' sake old Donna save. Or, if thy vowed revenge pursue my death, give to my friends my body void of breath. The Latian chiefs have seen me beg my life. Thine is the conquest, than the royal wife against a yielded man. Tease mean ignoble strife. In deep suspense the Trojan seemed to stand, and just prepared to strike, repressed his hand. He rolled his eyes, and every moment felt his manly soul with more compassion melt, when, casting down a casual glance, he spied the golden belt that glittered on his side, the fatal spoils which haughty Turnus tore from dying Pallas, and in triumph wore. Then, roused anew to wrath, he loudly cries, flames, while he spoke, came flashing from his eyes. Traitor, dost thou to grace pretend, clad as thou art in trophies of my friend, to his sad soul a grateful offering go? Tease Pallas gives this deadly blow. He raised his arm aloft, and at the word, deep in his bosom drove the shining sword. The streaming blood distained his arms around, and the disdainful soul came rushing through the wound.